Hey you, I'm Andy Powell. Welcome to the Allcast Podcast. No topic is off the table. I hope you enjoy. All right, Chad Nelson, welcome.
Thank you, man. Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. So can we share who you work for?
I
Don't
think I
have
might.
to.
Yeah, I think I'll just leave them out.
Cool.
Working here in Northern Arizona in a local agency here.
And what do you do?
I'm a detective.
Okay. And what kind of cases do you investigate? Like homicide detective or?
A little bit of everything based on the size of our agency. We kind of dabble in everything. Homicides. I've done a couple of those, few of those since being with in the detective bureau, and frauds, thefts, child crimes is unfortunately a big part of what we do. I would say probably 75% of what we do is child crimes.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh man, that's tough. I wouldn't have guessed that.
Yeah.
So in the agency you work for, there's not like a dedicated burglary detective.
Yeah, well, there is in a sense. And so they will see talent, and then when you show a specific kind of skill for an area, they'll kind of give you more of the complicated ones on those.
Okay.
But there's no discrimination on the stuff people get. I mean, everyone gets everything.
Awesome. Okay. And what made you want to do what you're doing?
As far as police work, I'll dive into that a little bit. Police work was something I grew up with. My dad did, and I had a great deal of respect for my father and the work that he did. And I loved hearing his stories. And so I was just like, I always knew that's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to sit in an office. You know, everyone's going to say that same thing. Military really transcribed itself into that as far as the structure, paramilitary. The detective stuff is I just like the complicated work, you know. I mean, the patrol stuff was fun, the foot chases, the fights, the other stuff was fun when you're younger, but I've always strived to have a higher understanding of the job and wanting to kind of actually get the real criminals, because some of those low end stuff, I mean, it's one day in jail and see him back again, and it's, you know, in the beginning it's fun, and then you feel righteous about it, and then you get kind of like farther into the job and you're like, is it really that big of a deal? And then you really want to tackle the important things that really affect the society. And that's where I feel the detectives kind of dive
Right
into.
on.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. Where'd you grow up?
Grew up for the first 11 years of my life is Peoria. And then the rest of it was in Paulden and Chino area up here.
Oh, no kidding. Okay.
Yeah.
Right on. And how did you think it would go being in law enforcement? What did you think would happen when you first got in?
Man, that's a tough question. If you were asking me as a kid,
Yeah.
I was going to be a SWAT guy, and man, I was going to be the number one guy in the agency, you know. And then when I got out of the military, I think it kind of shifted because there was a hiring freeze when I got out. That was at 2010 time, so nobody was hiring. I was testing with 3,000 people at the time.
Oh, wow.
Which now we're lucky to get 3 or 4 to test. You know,
Crazy.
It's a big swing, and I would just be happy to be on the road, and so I always knew that when I went in there, I'd give the best I could, and I knew that my work ethic, and that I would end up somewhere important. But I started losing the aspiration to be in command after being in the military, because seeing the upper chain and how things happened in the military, I lost a lot of respect for that side.
Yeah.
And a lot of the important decisions were made at the lower level. And yeah, man. So I just wanted to make an impact on whoever I could when I was in there, and it didn't matter what title I ended up with at the end of the day.
Yeah. I can relate to that. What branch of the military did you serve in?
It was Navy.
Navy. And what'd you do there?
I started off in logistics. I did logistics for about a year and a half, 2 years. And then I transitioned over to EOD school, and it wasn't for me. And I decided that I would transition back into regular Navy, got back out to a boat in Virginia, and then tested into engineers. I stayed with my same rate, logistics, and then I was part of a battle locker, or repair locker is what they call it. And then I had to take some tests, and I got repairs or engineer certified, and I ran a repair locker. And I fixed fire equipment, fixed doors, fixed all sorts of stuff around the ship for the last 2.5, 3 years of my career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I was in Army for a little bit, and one thing I noticed about the chain of command in Army is that anybody can make rank. Anybody can become a sergeant, a staff sergeant. You just have to memorize some stuff and not mess up. Or even messing up, sometimes that's what it would take in order to get promoted. What's the phrase? Fuck up, move up.
Yeah, and it's man the and as you can see, the people that worked harder always got the most jobs.
Yeah.
I was always up, man. I enjoyed it though. I'd wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and I'd just go to work just because I couldn't sleep. I mean, being on the fucking boat was just like a floating prison, man.
Yeah, I bet.
And sometimes I just needed to clear my head, and I'd wake up and I'd feel claustrophobic, and I'm like, I'm gonna get outside and I'm just gonna start scrubbing some hose nozzles and whatever else. And so that kind of set me apart. But that was the first time in my life, actually being an engineer, that I actually took responsibility for. I was such a shithead growing up. I did a lot of dumb stuff, and that group of guys really taught me work ethic and responsibility, which is great. Yeah.
How long were you on a ship at a given time?
My longest tour was 8 months, a little over 8 months.
Ooh.
Yeah. Yeah.
No thanks.
Yeah, and I did three full tours, and we did a small 3 month. I did about 75-80% of my time was out to sea.
Okay, and when you're out to sea, you're traveling from one place in the world to a different place, or you're docked somewhere, or any of the above?
No, we could just be out in the ocean waiting on the air debt. We could we're just not docked. We're waterlocked, I guess, if you would say. I mean, we were just out. And I had very little time on shore.
Okay, so you're out somewhere in the ocean, maybe anchored there for days or weeks at a time.
It could be.
Good grief, man. Yeah. Okay. What ship were you on, or can you share?
Yeah, I can. Two. I started off on the Abraham Lincoln, which was out of Everett, Washington. And then I ended up on the Vela Gulf, which is now decommissioned, out of Norfolk, Virginia.
What was the coolest place you went to?
Israel.
Oh, you went to Israel.
Oh, I was in. Yeah, we did Israeli missile defense on U.S. Vela Gulf. That was 2 of my tours that I've done. The other one was on the Abraham Lincoln, and all of my favorite tours were the ones that were focused on the Israeli missile defense.
What years was that?
I was in 2006 to 10. Israeli missile defense, I was 2007 or 8 to 10. So yeah, those times on the boat during that Israeli missile defense was very interesting. I just really enjoyed that mission. I mean, we got to do pirate operations.
Oh, cool.
We were the first boat, from what I understand, to do pirate operations. You saw the movie Captain Phillips?
No, I didn't see it. I know of it though.
All right, so we did the Faina, and it was a trial run, from what I understand. And the Somali pirates took over this ship that had some. Again, this is some time ago, but I believe it was Russian military equipment of some sort. The captain ended up dying on that boat. We had a Marine sniper unit on board. We never did much with that, but we were out. We ran out of food because we couldn't get people close enough to give us food. We had to leave, and it was a crazy tour, and we were able to recover that ship. But then Captain Phillips happened right after, and then they got the cool sniper shot, and so they got a movie, and
wow.
Yeah, it was cool. We got the pirate stuff we got to do quite a bit of.
That's awesome. Yeah. It's always better when you get to do some sort of real application,
yeah,
rather than just sitting around or training or whatever. All right, and other than being a detective, what do you do at the agency that you work for?
Well, I am an FTO. I also teach constitutional law for our agency. I helped write our policy for the Prop 207, the new marijuana law.
Okay.
The legalization of that and how we're going to implement that.
Is that something statewide?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah. Prop 207 was something that they implemented a few years ago, and we had to come up with a plan with the agency because now marijuana was legal, and the Fourth Amendment is hugely affected by that because the smell of marijuana alone is no longer enough to get into a car. But what does that mean? It doesn't mean burnt marijuana. That's the same as like a DUI or whatever if I smell alcohol in someone's breath. So you have to be able to articulate that But navigating those waters early on was very important to the agency. And so creating policy on how we were going to deal with that, because there's certain quantities people were allowed to have as far as oils and certain derivatives.
Yeah.
And then also just the flour that they were allowed to have. And so we came up with that, and I was a huge part of that. The constitutional law part, I get to teach. It's my privilege to teach. I don't actually have my law enforcement teaching certificate because I got it during the jail, and they don't recognize that. It has to be post. So when I teach, I got to have I don't know if you would, a watcher, somebody that has their certificate, even though I'm the teacher, but somebody has their certificate
Yeah.
to approve the
Yeah.
stuff I have. And the reason behind that is there's a lot of restrictions as far as how many classes I can go, what's our training budget, and it just never really fits in for me to go back and get the recertification that I've already had through the jail when I taught in the jail, to get the post. And so for me, it's kind of went on the back burner because it doesn't matter. I get my buddy who's kind of same like mine, and he sits in a chair and chimes in when he needs to, and I teach my class. So,
That's cool.
yeah.
And how'd you get into doing that?
Well, so that's an interesting story. So when I first started on patrol, I got some drug arrest. I was pretty big into trying to, find drugs. There was this kind of a, if you will, a competition to see how many people we can find with drugs that night. When we first started, it was just exciting. We were meeting new people and this new way of life that we never thought we would, be a part of. And I remember sitting on a bench trial, and I got my ass handed to me by a defense attorney, and I didn't really understand what I was talking about, and I realized that for the first time.
So you had made an arrest that didn't result in a conviction because you didn't know what you were doing regarding the constitutional law?
No, he was convicted ultimately, but the things that the attorney was asking me, I couldn't answer.
Okay.
And I just felt like an idiot.
Yeah.
And I was just like, why can't I, and I started feeling that sense of, that know-it-all just because I said so. And I was like, I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. And I just went back, and, my buddy had already started studying some case law, and he started like pointing me in the right directions. And I started just kind of diving into it. And I just decided that at that day and that time that if I didn't know something and I didn't understand it, I'd go back and research it, and I would become very familiar as much as I could with the case law side of it. Obviously our side, the deputy side or police officer side, we work on probable cause. It's a low threshold, comparatively than, beyond a reasonable doubt when it comes to law, and so we can talk to county attorneys or city attorneys about what case law we use to get in the car, but they don't care about that because they need to focus on how we have to get all the jury to be on board here, and so being able to articulate what I had to do really lessened the threshold of violence because I was able to explain it, and I was able to explain it in a way that I didn't get angry like you see some of these dipshit cops that are out there that are screaming at the top of their lungs because they're just like, listen to me because I'm a cop, and it's just like, take a breath, man, and explain something, man, because sometimes you like these people that they're just going to challenge you because they don't know either.
Yeah.
But if they feel that you don't know, then they're going to keep it's like a defiant kid.
Yep.
But if you can show it to them and say, go ahead and look at it, man, take your phone out, look it up, I'm going to run your information, I'll be right back, and then we come back and we have a conversation. It's like conversation goes a lot different.
Yeah. Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's a good way to de-escalate.
Yeah.
So when you're teaching these guys, are these brand new guys that are fresh out of the academy?
No, man, not all the time. Not all the time. I do, like I said, I've taught a couple academy classes. I did one with K9. I did last year's constitutional law with NARDA. Again, like I said, I'm working to get that certification once I can get into that class on this side so I can teach it all the time.
What's NARDA?
NARDA is the Northern Arizona Regional Trading Academy.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's just like, like I said, it's a passion of teaching because it's important to me that these kids understand that we're not here to fuck with the public.
Yeah.
It's not our job.
Yeah, especially now that certain agencies are lowering their...
Oh, dude.
What did they lower as far as what you have to do to get in?
It depends on the agency.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it does. I mean, AC Post has some standards that I don't really can't speak of because I I don't follow a lot of it, but I can speak to our agency. Our detention center is, man, we don't even do necessarily backgrounds anymore. We don't do a polygraph anymore.
You don't do a polygraph?
No.
Oh, dude, I'm in.
Yeah, everyone's in, dude. You speak a good game, and
Yeah.
it's
That's wild.
it is because it's hard to find people,
And
and we're trying to fill certain positions, and they're lowering that the written test is out the window.
the what?
The written test.
It's out the window. Like they're
Yeah,
not doing
dude,
it anymore.
we're not even doing that, man. It's a face-to-face interview, and then we have a physical. They got to go and go to a doctor, and then they have to do a fitness test, and the fitness test is kind of just, if you make an effort, we're good with it, as long as you continue to make that effort through the academy and get a little bit better. There's really no standard, and so it's really going to create some issues later on
Dude.
with the people that are going to sneak through.
No.
I know,
No.
but
This is not good.
we're having to get down to that level, and then on top of it, we're offering bonuses and
That's like a participation award.
oh, dude, I mean,
Just
these people that
if
are
you
coming
give it-
through are kind of embarrassing. I
If
mean,
you give an effort, you get in.
yeah, I mean,
Wow.
our side, the road side, hasn't we haven't dropped any standards whatsoever. It's the jail side,
Okay.
but
Okay, so there's still a polygraph for being a
Oh, yeah.
police officer.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, we still have that standard. It's just that lower level of law enforcement that they got rid of it because it's so hard to find people to.
So you're
to want
talking
an
you're
adult
talking about
babysit.
detention
Detention.
officers? Okay, so those guys. So okay. Well, I guess it'd be easier to get stuff in and out of jail or prison.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what we're gonna end up running into. I mean, that's my prediction. I mean, it hasn't happened yet.
Okay,
we
so-
still have some integrity there, but I mean, it's gonna happen.
The average
eventually.
street cop that we run into, they haven't lowered those standards.
Not in the area.
Okay.
No, they're still very stringent on how they do that.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
So it
I
hasn't gotten there
misunderstood. Right on.
Yeah.
All right. Going back to the Prop 207 stuff, what can you expand a little bit more on what you did to, I guess, rewrite what the agency standards are for getting into search a vehicle?
Yeah. So marijuana used to be like our bread and butter. Marijuana has such a smell to it that
Yeah.
it's, I mean, you walk up to a car and you ask if there's marijuana in the car, and no, there's no marijuana in the car. I'd step out of the car. I want to search that car. It was an instant, I got to search your car.
Yeah.
And that changes because Prop 207 made the language in there that marijuana smell alone was not enough now to search a vehicle. Now, what did that mean? That meant flower, green marijuana, non-burnt was not enough, right? Because now it's legal. But there was other stipulations. You have to be 21 years old. So am I allowed now to search a vehicle if an 18-year-old pulls up, they're an adult, and they have a smell of marijuana coming out of the car, being it green, not burnt? We had to come up with that, and that was an argument between command and people who are like on my level. And, I mean, the law clearly states that you have to be 21, so 18-year-olds aren't protected on that, but there's no case law written on that yet. Further, we had to talk about our dogs, our canines. Our canines were marijuana certified. That was a big deal. Is that going to create some bias? Because if the dog's alert on a vehicle, and we pull them over and we hold them for a while, and all we find is marijuana, did we violate their rights? And there's some case law that was out there at the time because California had already legalized, and so did Nevada. And so Nevada and California had some case laws that were out there that gave us a probability.
So you're saying those dogs might alert on the car if it's marijuana, or they might be alerting if it's cocaine.
Correct. And
Okay.
so there was some percentage number. It's in the 80s, 86% or whatever it may be, that the judge said, well, based on the answers, so people have a guilty mind, right? So like if I ask if there's marijuana in the car and someone's like, no, and I'm like, I clearly smelt it, and so can I search the car? And the guy says no, and I run my marijuana detection dog on the car, and the dog alerts to the car, but he's also, marijuana detection dogs are going to be alerting to cocaine, fentanyl, sometimes fentanyl, not all dogs are fentanyl, methamphetamines, heroin, that kind of stuff.
So it could be any of those.
It could have been, and the judge said that it was sufficient enough that because of the lie that you said no marijuana was in the car, that we more than likely are going to find something else in the car, and that was the case with these case laws.
Okay.
And so that kind of gave us the end to continue using our marijuana dogs, but we're still phasing them out because it's just sooner or later it's going to lose in court, and those dogs are going to be, you can't use them.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, have you been a canine officer?
I was for a year.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And your dog, you don't get to keep the dog if it's still young enough to continue working?
No, I didn't get to keep him, but he wasn't young. He was getting old.
Yeah.
And so the next guy that took over got to keep him, and I believe he's still in service, but I think they're getting ready to, get him out and retire him.
So where do they go?
To the handler if they want.
Okay.
Yeah, they retire him for $1.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
That's a good deal. Good
Yeah.
adoption fee right there. Or what do they call that? The rehoming fee.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. All right. So what is so if I get hired on and I become an officer, a deputy, or a patrolman, and I go to take your class, like what does day one look like for me?
Well, my class is, it's a 2-part, so I do 2 days. We literally go over situational stuff, but we go over statutes, ARS statutes.
You go over the Constitution?
I do for certain things, and only when I say specific things or certain things, we're talking about the Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, Sixth Amendment. And Fourth Amendment, being the search and seizure. Fifth Amendment, right not to incriminate yourself, and then the Sixth Amendment in our world, the right to have someone represent you in court, right? And so we try to distinguish the Fifth and Sixth between the kids because, I call them kids, but between the guys that come in and girls that come in,
The new guys.
yeah, because they're trying to figure out where Miranda fits, and when someone asks for a lawyer, what we have to do, and what does that mean, And so we do go over that, and someone's going to ask for a lawyer. We're going to get those people that say, "I want representation. I'm not talking to you." Does that mean I have to get them a lawyer right then and there? No, it doesn't mean I got to go run out and grab a lawyer and bring him in here. It just means we're not talking anymore, and he'll get appointed one later on, and that's the Sixth Amendment that comes in the next day. When they go and see the judge. And so we go over that. We go over the Fourth Amendment heavily because the Fourth Amendment's our biggest thing. In America, I mean, outside of freedom of speech. I know some people will probably put Second Amendment up there. I say Fourth Amendment's probably our bigger one because where are we going to store our Second Amendment?
Yeah.
It's our house, and things. And so we're in knowing our Fourth Amendment and where things are protected, the car being the less protected thing out of anything we own because it's readily movable.
The Fourth Amendment covers your home, everything on your property, your car, and your person, right?
Your person, man. Yeah, your person is almost is as protected. Not almost. It is as protected as your home.
Yeah.
Those pockets. The only thing is the Terry frisk that really kind of throws a wrench into that because I can articulate things that I feel on your house, on your pants. I can't articulate feeling on the outside of your home,
right?
And saying, well, there's probably some meth in here. I can feel it on the home, because you got curtilage, right? And so that curtilage there offers some protection as well.
That's like curtains. Is that what that means?
No, the curtilage is the line around your house that your property sits on, right?
Okay.
So the beginning of your driveway is your curtilage.
Okay.
So I mean, I might be able to articulate that. Andy was implicated in stealing a car, and in this car is a red convertible, and you put a blanket over, and I see a red car, and I jump on your property and open up this blanket and say, "Oh, there's a red convertible."
It'll get thrown out, huh?
It's going to get thrown out, man.
Wow.
It's fruits of the poisonous tree, man, because that's your curtilage. I had the time to go write a warrant, and I didn't. And so it's important that these kids understand that because we can get so excited that we find something. And some of these officers, I would say most of them are so excited they don't even think about these things.
Oh, wow.
And that they're jumping on your property to do what they feel is the right thing because that's obviously it's a stolen vehicle, so I'm going to go get it.
Yeah.
But the courts also ruled that, man, that it's protected, man. You have time to go get a warrant. There's no exigency here.
Yeah, which means I have time to disassemble that car or move it to a different location.
Right, but we have it locked down, man. It's not happening at the moment, and so then the courts ruled that you got to take the time to write the warrant.
Man, okay. So then, what are some ways that you have to word a warrant a certain way to get approved by a judge, or
no, you don't. I wouldn't say that. We're not tricking anybody because there's a very specific language. We have to be truthful in our language. We can't be willfully trying to manipulate the facts, and that's the first thing that we're going to get thrown out. So if I were to, be on body cam and say, I witnessed this red car that Andy stole, and I outside the curtilage, and then they look at the body camera, and they say, well, no, you went on the curtilage, you opened up. That kid now, or guy, girl, is going to be, Brady listed. They're going to be fired. They're going to be sued. The agency's not going to back you on that.
Yeah.
And especially nowadays, man, there's just no getting away
Yeah.
from it because you got it right here.
Yeah. Yeah, and everybody's afraid of liability.
Sure.
Yeah, they don't want to be sued. So then when it comes to probable cause, reasonable suspicion, and beyond a shadow of a doubt, that's where you, it seems to me from an outside perspective like there's a lot of wiggle room with those things when it comes to searching maybe somebody's car at a traffic stop or something. Would you say that there's wiggle room in those, or could you define the lines of what is reasonable suspicion, what is probable cause?
Yeah, so probable cause is what a reasonable person would feel is a crime, right? And then reasonable suspicion is a reasonable person would feel is like might be something crazy is going on. There's probably some criminal, activity afoot, so I'm going to check it out. Beyond a reasonable doubt is the definitive line that we have put in the sand to put someone in prison.
As in, you have the facts.
We're in jury, and all 12 jurors, 13 jurors are going to say like, "Yep, he did it."
Okay.
But probable cause is very loose. What's a reasonable person say, man?
And the probable cause is the lowest tier of
That's
those
for
three?
us to put
Yeah.
somebody in custody and arrest them.
Yeah.
Reasonable suspicion is the lowest of the low for me to actually pull you over and start questioning
Okay,
you.
that's what. Okay.
Yeah.
Right on.
And that's what we work with most of the time to establish probable cause, or what
Right.
we call PC. We reasonable suspicion. I might say this so the audience, RS, will say or reasonable suspicion that we'll establish probable cause through reasonable suspicion. But it's a low standard, man. Probable cause is very low. It's what's a reasonable person, and at the time when I'm there on the side of the road, or I'm there. Do I have a collective mind with the rest of a reasonable society that's saying, I don't think so? I'm just thinking of myself as a reasonable person, and I feel I'm reasonable. And yeah, man, you did this crime, and we arrest on that, and then the court decides, and that's the reason why the idea of police and the justice system was good, because they're separated somewhat, because we have to have a group of your peers that convict you, and that we as police are separated from that, and we're starting to see a breakdown, I believe, in that system as well.
How so?
Societal differences, societal biases, the
Culture?
culture in general. You're starting to get one way or another. It's two stark differences. We don't have an in between anymore, where people can come in and be like, I hate cops, but yeah, this guy killed him. Like we get people now that are like, I hate cops, and no matter what this guy did, he's free.
Oh, okay.
And then the other way
Yeah.
around, the vice versa.
Yeah.
We're getting both of that, man. And it's hard to get those objective people
Which
in
would
the courtroom.
be, I would designate that as an unreasonable mentality.
Yeah, and so that's the thing. So are we pushing the line of reasonableness, and is that pushing the line of how we arrest? I don't know, man. I think so. Reasonable people are becoming less and less available.
Oh, it's unfortunate, and I agree with you. Do you think 2 days is enough time to disseminate everything to these officers?
No.
No. How much time would you allocate to teach somebody this stuff and say, hey, now you're competent, and I'm confident that you'll go out there and abide by what you've learned?
Dude, my real answer is 5-7 years.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's a degree path.
And so that's woven into the experience of pulling people over, talking to people, all that stuff.
Any officer worth their salt is going to tell you 5 to 7 years is when you start to get your kind of like, okay, I understand what I'm talking about.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's which is a problem, because most agencies out there allow people to start testing for sergeant around 3 years.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Sounds familiar. Sounds like the military.
Yep.
Yeah. You don't have to be able to lead men. You just have to memorize some stuff.
Yeah, and then
That's great.
Yeah, like I said, 5 to 7 years, man, I'll stick to that to the day I die. And you're still at the low end.
So if you could expand the 2-day class or training, how much would you say? Maybe like a 4-week course or something?
I don't know, man. That's a question I probably have to sit down and think about more.
Because
We give them a basic understanding, but in the academy, everything is a brain dump, man. It's you listen to it, and then you're just waiting for the end of the week test, and then you brain dump it and you move on because
yeah,
it's you're in survival mode. You got
yeah,
22 weeks, I think now that they do, and they're just wanting to get to the end. You don't, and a lot of the people in the academy will tell you, man, you're like, don't ever say this, is there's some kind of taboo against them saying like you don't learn anything in the academy, and you do learn some stuff, but you really don't retain it, and that's a
right.
better way of saying it until you're out because you're not afraid of being let go and not cutting it, and you start to retain it after the academy. Not that you're not learning, that you catch some stuff,
Yeah,
but
yeah. It's more about exposure,
it's yeah,
and you need exposure in order
well,
to actually retain that
yeah,
type
these
of
the
information.
scenarios that are safe where we have people that are passively resisting, or you're never going to get seriously hurt, and yeah, it's definitely an experience.
Right on. And is that required learning for all law enforcement officers in the state of Arizona or in all states?
I don't know about all states. Arizona does have a constitutional area, and that's AZ post required.
Okay, right. AZ post
Yeah,
standards.
AZ post standards, and so that is a class that has to be taught.
So there's no requirement to like memorize the constitutional amendments, or I know you have to memorize the Miranda rights and recite those.
We don't even have to memorize. Well, I mean, they might ask you on a test. I can't remember back that far, but we get cards we read from, which is actually kind of preferred, and the attorneys want to see that, that you're reading verbatim from a state approved card or an agency approved card. They want to see that, but as far as memorizing all the constitutional amendments, I would say I'm not. I mean, although we're here to protect the Constitution and the Constitution and the constitutional rights of everyone in our community, I would say there's a few first, second, fourth, fifth, sixth. I'm sure there's some I'm missing, but not all of them are something that we can positively or negatively affect
Okay.
because we've added I mean, how many things and provisions have we added to the Constitution that really have nothing to do with actual law enforcement? Meaning, like fifth, for example, double jeopardy. I have nothing to do with double jeopardy, and so I can't protect your double jeopardy outside of if some random court decided they wanted to retry you on the same case you were found innocent on. I might be a good citizen and be like, I'm not letting that happen. But ultimately, who's going to win that?
Right.
You know?
Interesting.
Yeah.
So what are some kind of loopholes that are not necessarily taught to police, but that police might use to search somebody or to get an arrest or something like that?
Well, calling them loopholes would be, I think, a little discrediting in a way because they're search warrant exceptions, and if people to study their search warrant exceptions, there's a lot of things that you can do. Now, you can go into certain things like, let's say Miranda, for example. Miranda applies when you're in interrogation and you're, in custody, right? You have to meet both of those standards for Miranda to apply. I can't, like if I'm on scene and I show up and it's a domestic violence scene, I have no idea what's going on. I got a wife and a husband that are bloody and I need to talk to them and see like what happened here. Obviously we think someone's going to go to jail there, but we also have to be fact finders. We have to find fact before we read Miranda to someone that we believe we're going to bring to jail. And so someone might say, well, do you need to read me Miranda right now? And I'll be like, no, you're not under arrest. You're being interrogated. I need to find that. It's not a loophole and it's not a lie. I could read the guy Miranda or girl Miranda. It's not going to hurt anything, but it also would hurt my questioning if I started doing that because now that person feels they're under arrest and they might not say everything. And so if we're talking about loopholes, I guess you can say that might be one. It's not really a loophole, but it's
An advantage, maybe.
an advantage.
So it's safe to say that one of the biggest advantages of police officers doing their job successfully and finding out information is the ignorance of the average citizen to what the law is and how it's written.
100%, man. Yeah, it's the plainest language you can use. I mean, the ignorance, and we use that. 100% use that.
Totally.
The people that know what they're doing. The other people, that's where you start seeing that heavy-handedness. Like I got a badge. You're going to listen to me. You're going to talk to me, and this and that. I do. It's not manipulation by any means that I believe that I'm doing when I'm talking with them. I'm simply using the law just like anyone would use the tax law in their benefit. Like, I need to get to the end here to figure out what happened and effectively do my job, and so I'm going to use these exceptions to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I was in the military, one of the most enforced regulations is haircut stuff.
Ah.
But the longer you're in, the more, well, maybe in my case, the longer I was in, the more defiant I became, seeing how the system worked and how the rank worked. And so I'd read the regulations and I'd walk the line of the regulations, and basically the more you know, the better equipped you are to follow the regulations as they're written, rather than getting bitched at by a sergeant major and saying, oh, actually it's written this way. So
Right. No, and I understand, and there are people, and I've done this as well, and you walk the line, and because I feel like I'm articulate enough that I understand what's going on, and I can articulate things that I'm doing, especially with the Fourth Amendment, that I might push it a little bit, and I did actually. I did with the Prop 207. We had some case law that had come out of Nevada and California, and I had a guy, and I used those case laws I told you about. The He lied about the marijuana smell. He said there was no marijuana in the car, and we ended up finding a bunch of meth in the car. The county attorney ultimately wasn't versed on it, and they declined the charges, and the guy got out, and no big deal. It's meth. The guy's not killing people or whatever. It's like it's a cat and mouse game here, and you're looking at me a little bit weird here, but the meth thing. In the beginning, it becomes this personal vendetta. I'm going to get the meth off the road, right? I'm going to do this, and then you start realizing these people, a lot of them are good people, a lot of them are.
whoa.
Yeah, and they're just have this affliction that is so far beyond their control because
Yeah.
of their friend circles, and they get put in a system and the system is against them. The system is a revolving door. But the Arizona try to mitigate that. They try to do these drug court treatment things like tasks and everything else. And they get so many times they could get arrested. I can't remember the number, 7 times or whatever it was for paraphernalia in small amounts, whatever, before they had to do mandatory prison time.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, but none
Giving
of
them
them.
a lot of chances.
They give them a lot of chances. I don't, and 7 might be too much. It may be too little. I can't remember the exact number.
I was giving you that funny look because you said they're not out there hurting people; they're just doing meth. So my association with meth users is that it would motivate somebody to hurt somebody or to commit other crimes in order to get what they need.
Yeah, and so there's a fine line between that, and I agree with you on a certain sense. And I'll always it's a confusing conversation because it's twofold. The people in general aren't bad. Right?
Yeah.
They're not bad. They actually, a lot of them have really good hearts. They're compassionate. They have relationships they want to. The guys tend to be the ones that are more controlling because they use the meth for sex, and they use
Yeah.
the girls that are, looking for it, and it's free sex for them, and the girls get free meth, and there's that culture, you know. But then you have the people that just get into it. Like a lot of the times, it's these girls that are into it are picked up at 16, 17, 15, 14, 13 years old by older men introduced to meth because they look up to this older man, and then now their lifetime drug users from the age of 15. They had no chance. And so you have to start looking at it objectively, where it's like, I don't hate these people, because in the beginning you hate them. I'm telling you, I mean, as a police officer, you hate them. You treat them as low lifes, and they're not worthy of talking to you and all sorts of other crap. And then longer you get in, you're like, man, this is not the right attitude, because they're not. They have a problem, and the problem is their friend circle, and it's hard to get out of that friend circle because familiarity. You go right back to it. When you get out, it's not easy for someone to say, okay, I'm going to pick up and move. I got no money. I got no family.
No friends.
No friends. I'm going to move across the country, and I hope I can get a job, and I hope I find friends that are not into drugs. But most of the jobs that they have to get, those
Same.
jobs are right back into the same thing, man.
Yeah, that culture.
It's a vicious circle. But to jump back on what you're saying, meth does bring, just like heroin, like you listen to Joe Rogan and some of these other people talking about, let's just legalize everything. That's not the case either, because you get these guys and girls that do these drugs. They're up all night. They're doing stuff that normally me and you wouldn't do. They might be menace to society. They're running around on roofs. They're doing all sorts of stuff that normal people wouldn't do, and they're causing people anxiety. They are a menace to society, but how do you fix that? I don't think anyone's come up with the right answer. It's not to legalize it all, but it's also not to vilify them and throw them in jail all the time.
Yeah.
Some of them, yeah, you got to. It's just like there's no other way. But is there a better system? I don't know, man. I don't know if I'm smart enough to know that.
Right. Well, you're smart enough to recognize that the one or the other option, the black and white.
Yeah.
Just like in politics, the two party system's not fully functional.
Oh no.
Just like, they're either the bad person or you need to legalize it all. It's somewhere in the middle.
It's a complicated answer in the middle somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Going to people that are resistant in different ways. Obviously, they might not know the law. They might have something against cops. They don't want to get caught, whatever it is. And then you got like the sovereign citizen movement and people like that who are more well versed in the law, maybe to a dangerous degree for themselves. I don't know enough about that to really speak fully on what it is. But what do you know about sovereign citizens, and have you had any interactions like that?
Yeah, I've had several interactions with them. Obviously, they're a group of people that don't accept authority, right? Especially ones that are appointed, not from the city councils or anything else. They're more apt to listen to an elected official, the sheriff, the people that were voted in by the people. So they tend to kind of follow that route. My interaction with them generally that we've had is it's land-based stuff and traveling is what they call it. They're not driving, they're traveling. And that has a lot to do with the Declaration of Independence, the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, their interstate travel, which is talked about throughout the Constitution. They're allowed to travel through the states without a passport, and there's always a big hang-up about what does that mean, and commerce tends to be their biggest issue. And they're not in commerce, and they believe that if you're doing business, driving product from one place to another place, you have to have a license. And so as they're enjoying their life, because a car allows them to enjoy their life, that they're allowed to drive without a license. And that's mostly the stuff you'll get. And so you'll start seeing they'll have packets that they'll hand you, like with case laws, and then little packets that they'll give you about how they're going to sue you, packets about their little constitutional camp they're with, and all sorts of stuff. You get all sorts of varying things. Most of them are very passive, and then you have some of them that are very kind of like devout in it, and it's going to be a fight to the death.
Kind of more rigid.
Yeah, they're gonna go after whoever is going to trample on their freedoms, right? Because they believe that that's what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And to a certain extent, I somewhat can see where they're coming from.
Yeah.
If they're really in that mind space and they think that I'm taking away every single freedom they have because they're driving without a license, or we had a guy driving with a license plate that a cardboard license plate that said no license on it. Just because they don't care, right? And he changed his name, some crazy name like Zebediah Synapticus or something stupid.
He legally changed his name?
No.
That's what's funny about these people. There's the ones that are operating under the legal tenets of it, or the legal system, and then there's ones that think that the legal system is it's something that's been established that they don't necessarily have to be a part of because they didn't agree to it. Mm-hmm. Kind of like the birth certificate thing. Have you heard about the birth certificate fraud?
I haven't heard that.
So it's the idea that the birth certificate system was created when this country went bankrupt so that we could leverage human beings against the national debt.
You know what? Actually, I did read that last week.
Last week. So then when your parents sign off on this thing, you are automatically subjected to this debt and subjected to this system unless you actually file a claim to remove yourself from that, and saying that now you're the administrator of that identity.
Hmm.
which is so then you're not technically part of the law. It has to do with like admiralty law and stuff like that. Fascinating rabbit hole that I've been going down.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I just wondered the legality because there's a lot of people who do the same thing with plots of land, and there's like certain, and I can't even remember the verbiage that we get some of the time with the land, but they're allowed this land, and as long as they claim it through some sort of tax form, the government can't encroach on their property, and nothing they can do is being taxed. And it's hard to talk sometimes to these people because they have it so ingrained that because the people can be very convincing in that world.
Yeah.
Especially if you want to hear it.
Yep.
If you want to hear it, you're going to listen, and it's going to be okay. Yep, I understand exactly what you're saying, and that's exactly what I want to do anyway. So I'm going to do it, and that's what happens with these sovereign citizens. They'll spew some case law out to you. Actually, that's what I brought today, and I was going to share with you the two case laws I was talking to you about earlier.
Penn versus Mim.
No, that's Pennsylvania versus Mims. That's the me being able to ask the driver out of the car. But as far as sovereign citizens go, Thompson v. Smith and then Spokane v. Port. That's two very big ones that I see all the time. That's not the only ones. There's several of them. They'll take little ad libs out of there, and they kind of piece together stuff that sounds good, right? And the Thompson one was 1930s, and the Port one was 1986, and it was out of Virginia out of 1930, and like I said, it was police chief was able to give licenses and revoke licenses, and the guy was arguing that by him having a revoked license, it was going against his life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, and he had the right to travel, and he was in commerce. He was somebody that sold stuff, and at the end, the judge didn't really come to a conclusion outside. He kind of looked at both sides and kind of agreed with both sides. One side, yeah, man, you're taking away his driver's license. He can't be happy. And then the other one's like, we have to protect the streets. People have to have a proficient way of driving, and there's a test to prove that. And
So these people are saying when they don't have to have a driver's license, they're saying they don't have to test for it in order to travel, or they don't have to carry it around and present it to you like Nazi papers.
yeah, so it's both. It's twofold. And that whole presenting it to me thing is that comes at a later time because most of them have something, and it's just convincing them and showing them the statute. Because when you show some of these people like the statutes and everything, this is state law, and I'm working under the the guise of the state that's come up with this with an elected governor and these things. All these, they'll start listening. It takes some. It's just a very long process. But as far as the testing part is they just don't believe they need to do anything to drive because driving is just a right. That's a God-given right, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and that these streets I can drive on. And, the point where it starts to break down is although we live in a society that, is overtaxed, that's over-governed, it's over-regulated, the government's job at the end of the day is to make sure everyone's safe, and part of the government is the road system, and that road system requires a test of minimum proficiency to drive, and that's our driver's license test.
Yeah.
And that actually plays into the Spokane v. Port, where she goes and talks to the judge, and the judge says, okay, well, what do you think we should do? Instead of have an ID, driver's license, she says, well, I think we should have a test.
Oh,
and I think at the end of the test, we can get like a certificate or something. I can't remember the words she used. And the judge is like, you mean a driver's license?
Like, so she stated that what we should do is exactly what we're doing.
Yeah. And so they take some of the parts of that, Spokane v. Port, and they'll put it in their little manifesto, if you will. And, just the good parts, because the judge, they always agree. Like, I agree, man. Like, you not driving is going to be a hindrance in your life. And they always agree.
Yeah.
But we also have we have to protect the society or the public by, giving a specific test, and like, so it just always ends up not in their favor.
I think one thing that these people might look at that isn't really mentioned often is like the kind of the Overton window, that concept where things get shifted like a little bit at a time. So right now it's you have to present your driver's license and take this test, and then now you have to pay registration, and now you're legally required to have insurance, and it's like this little step that goes in one direction over time, and then 2 generations from now, I mean, who knows what it's going to be like.
Mm-hmm.
But I think one of the fears of those people is like is the change and the slow erosion of the rights through things like state law or privilege or we have to keep you safe. I think that's a dangerous territory for us to go down in general, but I don't necessarily know that the sovereign citizen approach is the way to fight that. But it kind of calls attention to it, at least for me.
It calls attention to it for a lot of people in my profession as well. And it's like we don't sympathize, like do not sympathize with them, and we do. And there's a lot of things I agree with them on, like, but the making of public roads, obviously there was a monetary, something in the beginning where they're like, we can make money off of this, and then they probably, fashioned it to, well, it's for the public safety or whatever. But you also have to look at it as a realistic kind of point of view where there should be a test to make sure that you're not blind or,
Right.
like you can like understand you're not retarded or, have like, some disability, like, like you can't. So there should be a test. And so at the end of the day, it's like, who's right, who's wrong? I think there is so much overreach on government.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of that, with police and, the police system, federally and locally. I believe that wholeheartedly. And it's just one of those things where you're driving without a license. It's a minimum offense. I get it. Unfortunately, I pulled you over, and here's where you're at, man. And I got a job to do.
Yeah.
And you can't drive because you can't prove you can on the local roads. Now, does that mean I'm always I don't arrest these people all the time? I would say 2 out of 10 times I arrest them because a lot of times it's like it turns into something different. It's a violent or, it's just so much pushback and they just refuse to get out of the car. They got to break windows and things like that.
That brings me to another question. Now, people that aren't sovereign citizens argue about this. Like, do you have to present your ID to a cop? Let's say you have an ID. Yeah. Do I have to know why you pulled me over? Do you have to tell me?
I don't have to, and so that's the thing. So, Arizona's a probable cause state, right? And so the Supreme Court has also ruled in several different occasions that it has no bearing if I tell you why I pulled you over to the legitimacy of the stop. It has no bearing. So I can literally not tell you the whole time, and there's no bearing. They kind of give us the playing field, and I know, it's I get it.
Yeah,
it's against the public in this regard.
Yeah.
But
being a person that gets pulled over, like, I don't know, you're a cop. You could be that kind of cop that's going to sit your knee on my neck till I'm dead. Or I don't know.
Pull you out the car, rape you, kill you, whatever, man. We have those cops, man.
That's fucking crazy.
Yeah, we have those cops. And so, they look at it as objectively reasonable that cops can do that, and they look at it as it's for the betterment of the public because a lot of states have fought what they call pretextual stops. Pretextual stops essentially is and I'm going to kind of layman term this. That way everyone who's listening can kind of understand what's going on here. I'm sitting on the side of the road. What I used to do is kind of interdiction stops, right? I didn't stop people for speeding because I didn't care. I'm not a pirate. I'm not here to tax people, because people are going 10 miles an hour over 20. They're missing a headlight. I don't care. And a lot of cops out there that do what I do that are looking for real crimes, we ignore that. And so if you see a cop sitting on the side of the road...
Thank you.
Yeah. But there's a lot of us out there, but there's some that, man, I can't stand. That's another conversation for another day.
The hall monitors of the police world.
Jeez, man, I do not like them.
Yeah.
They're not the same breed.
Yeah, nobody does. Yeah, they're a different type of person.
They are.
They're not necessarily in it for the, I guess, justice.
It's literally about the thumb on the and and it's those people that give us that you were picked on in high school, which I never was.
Yeah.
I was like, I played sports, I played in college basketball, I never had an issue with getting in fights and like being a loser, it was nothing like that. And I just, but at the same time, like those guys really do, and it's like it's a real problem, man.
Yeah.
Those guys are a problem.
Yeah.
And they're always going to be there until, I don't think anything is going to change. I mean, we can talk about that for days. So these pretextual stops is what we get. You'll see some cops sitting on the side of the road. They'll be sitting perpendicular to the road. Their lights are beaming right in your eyes when you go by, and you're like, what is this asshole doing putting his brights? What we're looking is for criminal activity. And so I'm looking for signs of nervousness. I'm looking for just something weird. Yeah, just, I mean, you'll get people like normal behavior. Someone looks over at me, flips me off, things like that, because they're not drawing attention to themselves. They are, these guys are, and they obviously they're like, fuck you, I hate you,
Yeah.
like, why are you doing this? They think I'm the guy that's out there writing traffic tickets, which
Yeah.
I don't.
No, you want the huge amounts of drugs.
I want drugs. I want warrants. I want other stuff. I want to meet that interesting person that's going to run for me, whatever it may be. That's going to make my night interesting. And
Yeah.
So, and so I honed that skill.
Yeah.
I really did, and I was very good at it, man. And like, I'm not just tooting my own horn here. Like, I was very good at it. The people I worked with, that's all we did. We did not care about any of that other shit. And yeah, so I'm looking for that guy that scratches his nose right when he goes by me, or does the cough, or grabs his drink and drinks right when he goes by me. And
Yeah.
those things cued me in. And so in Arizona, well, a lot of states, there are some that are fighting pretextual, and I think Maryland fought it, and I think they lost, and I think pretextual's back. You can't quote me on that, but I believe I read that. Not that it matters. We don't live in Maryland. But Arizona, is allowed to do that. And so I can see that, and I can follow you for fucking as long as I want. And I got to find one thing you do wrong.
Yeah, which is...
It's got to be legitimate.
It's so easy to do,
It's
though.
easy, man.
I mean, if people really went through and read all of the specific laws of how to drive...
Dude, 28 code is nuts.
Dude, you can pull people over within 30 seconds, I bet, anyone.
Well, it made it even easier for us, like, I want to say 6-7 years ago. It used to be you're allowed to have one brake light, and that was sufficient. Any brake light.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, you're allowed to have any one brake light out of your 3 that you have in the back working. How many cars do you think have that? Like most people, like I would say 40 to 50% of, well, maybe not 50, I don't want to go that high. Maybe 40% of cars out there have like a legitimate like problem with their brake lights that we're going to have something to find. But what about license plate lights?
Yeah.
I have to be able to read your license plate for 50 yards back.
50 yards. That's a standard, huh?
That's a standard, man. And so what about if you touch the white line like several times? What if the gas cap is hanging?
Yeah.
There's even still a statute in there that if you're coasting in a stick car, like a stick-driven car, and you're coasting, that was a freaking...
Are you serious?
Yeah, dude.
Why?
I don't know, man. I don't know if it's still in there, but it was when I first started. If I could prove that you were just in neutral and coasting down a hill, I could pull you over. It was dumb.
What the hell?
But same thing with the gas cap. It was that whole thing in the 80s where they had a lot, no gas, or the 70s or whatever it was, no gas, and they're citing people for waste of finite resource, which is still a stupid thing, or whatever we can pull you over for. So, numerous things hanging from your rearview mirror.
Yeah,
everyone does.
The quantity of blinks that you have to do before you go into the next
lane. Yeah, you have 100
and...
yards, you have 3 blinks, and then you have there's a lot of people but so we use that to our advantage, right? And then you also, in Arizona, you have to be so many yards back from somebody, and so when you're working the highway, there's ways to count. You can have a timer, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000. 3, 1,000 was our threshold. If it was before 3, 1,000, 1,000, 2, 1,000, they're that close, I'm pulling you over, you're tailgating. And that's how we would get a lot of people on the highway, because they're driving so careful. Most of them are hiding behind semi-trucks, and they don't, want to draw attention to themselves, so they're just kind of pacing behind semi-trucks at 60 miles an hour. Weird, right?
It's a way to draw attention to yourself.
Nobody travels that way.
Yeah.
Man. You want to get to where you're going.
Yeah.
So, that's a big thing. So, anyways, yeah, so we get that stuff. It's pretextual, 100%, and I can say that in court. Did you want to pull that person over? I did 100% want to pull that person over. Well, why? And I can talk about it, and it's completely cool. And I'm going to tell you, I was, 88% successful.
Yeah.
And on the other 12%, I would say there was something going on. I just couldn't figure it out. And some of those times it was like he was cheating on his wife, and I got that out of him, where it was just like, dude, there's something going on, man, but I don't think you have drugs in the car or a warrant. What's going on? It's like, I went to Vegas, I cheated on my wife. So they're guilty of something.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why they're projecting that guiltiness,
Wow.
And so it's, and
you learn to read that guilt really well.
I did, man. You do.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, you do. And so it was a fun world to live in for a while. And then you start getting a little bit I don't always want to be messing with these people. You know, I kind of want to go tackle some of the things that, in my opinion, matter a little bit more. You know.
Yeah. You ever come across anybody trafficking people?
Yeah, a few times we've come across that.
Now, is this like illegal immigrants or like sex traffic?
Mostly illegal immigrants. We call them ass haulers, because they just sometimes you get 20 people in a freaking Nissan Armada.
Yeah.
You know, just piling out and running in the desert, and sometimes they would just the coyotes that were proficient in what they did. They would just tell them to calm down. We talked to the coyotes and they would tell us like, we're getting $300 a head and we're going to Maryland, and we'd say okay because there's nothing we could do.
What?
No, we
Say
can't.
what?
Oh no, we don't do anything.
Are you fucking serious?
Oh dude, I'm telling you, we just had so the border patrol down there right now. I just had my buddies go down there and they did a detail. They did 137-mile-an-hour chases with these guys. They chased them through the desert, and ultimately at the end of the day, after everyone was chased down for 2-hour freaking chases that they did, they would give them papers for a court date 3 years from now. They wouldn't go to jail. There's no reason why we're doing any of this stuff. This is legitimate, straight from the border. They just came back Sunday, and so this
Holy
is coming
shit.
straight from the horse's mouth. They decided the people that were down there decided that we're not going to pursue because this is dangerous to the community. They're down there with an interagency, so multi-agency, and you got these people chasing these guys 130, 140 miles an hour to give them a freaking see you at court in 3 years, and we're letting them just stay. And that's what we did when I first started. We had the 287G program. The 287G program arrested those individuals, brought them to jail. Then they would be bussed down to Mexico.
That's like what we're supposed to be doing.
Right, but that was also under Obama, which a lot of people
That's
don't give that
weird.
guy a lot of credit.
That's really weird.
That's something you should give him some credit for because he did that.
So who's making those calls? Do you know?
It's federal.
It's federal
It's all
border
federal
policy.
border policy, man.
So Alejandro Mayorkas is the guy,
100%.
or he's at least the face of it.
He's the face of it.
Whether it's him or the people running cartels or the people in China manipulating the cartels, etc.
Yep.
Good.
They're using local agencies to help supplement because they're low on numbers as well, and a lot of sheriffs and departments are using it as a political because they all need to get elected. So it looks like they're strong on immigration. But I'm not saying like the sheriffs are all implicit on this. They want to send their people down there, and I think their guys are coming back with this information saying like, we're not doing anything down there than putting people in danger. A border patrol guy died last week. I don't know if you heard that.
No, I didn't.
And on a
How'd
quad.
he die?
He was driving a freaking
Just
quad
chasing somebody?
Yeah, in the desert.
Hit
And
it.
the only thing was going to happen at the end of it, he was going to get a see me in court 3 years ticket.
So what about states' rights? When state can overrule federal based on its own needs.
Yeah, I wish I knew more about that, Andy. And I know that there's a governmental interest here with the National Guard, and the governor can call things, and then like where does that play in? I mean, I don't know, because what we're seeing right now, at least from my perspective, is we don't matter, and state rights don't exist.
Yeah, well, we have a falsely elected governor as well.
Oh yeah,
who's working with the cartels. Is that what's that one guy, that attorney who's now the Secretary of State? Oh crap, I can't remember his name, but he was in the Marine Corps. He's an American, but he was a lawyer for the cartels. Adrian Fontes. And now he's the Secretary of State, which is what's her face used to be.
And we're living in a time which is, at least in Arizona, like it's culturally changing rapidly in Arizona, and we're starting to see some stuff that's coming up here. It's leaking into Yavapai County, and we're starting to see some violent crime. We're starting to see, cartel activity coming up through here, which we didn't see before. And cartels didn't really want to bring attention to themselves in Yavapai County or Cochise County and place because they're going to get convicted. And like in Maricopa, there's so many cases. A lot of them are just like probation for a year and then like, I see you later.
Yeah.
Here, we're going to put you in prison for the things that you do. But you're starting to see that because of the soft stance that we're seeing from the governor, like you're saying. And then, I mean, they got rid of the Border Strike Force, which is a huge multi-agency through DPS, drug trafficking task force, and huge. And it was a very successful program. And that was one of her first orders of business, was to get rid of that because it was racist.
What a
Yeah.
wow. Ooh, give me a second. That's frustrating.
It is.
Have you ever watched the Sean Ryan show?
I don't think so.
He's a podcaster, former Navy SEAL. He's got some really cool guests on. One of the guys that's his guest is a journalist who embeds himself with the cartels, and then comes out and talks about it.
Wow.
Talks about a lot of stuff. And one of the things that he says is that a lot of people are concerned with the cartels because of their violent tendencies and their violent abilities, and oftentimes they won't be violent unless you cross them. And really what they are is a business, and now they're trying to make business fronts legitimate and things like that. So I guess my question to you is the cartel stuff that you've run into, or the drug cartel stuff that you've run into, how much of that indicates violence or indicates business?
99% of it in Yavapai County is nonviolence.
Okay.
And the majority of it is business.
So it's trafficking and sales.
They haven't really brought a lot of violence up here yet because it doesn't make a lot of sense.
No.
They don't want to draw any more attention to them. And they are very much at that point in time, like the Hells Angels kind of switched over from the more violent activity to the business side, which like I said, I have never had any issues with any HA guys. Never.
Really?
Never.
Wow.
Never. I mean, they're not always respectful.
Yeah.
But I'm not having any issues, right?
That's
They have their thing to do.
Yeah.
And they know I have things to do. And there's certain people that talk to us and other people that they're not allowed. They have a hierarchy. They have a military background. There is some sort of what I believe is some unwanted respect, I guess. And I'm not going to say mutual respect but I mean, it's almost like that. You look at that organization, and I think that the cartels are trying to do a little bit more of that, because the more legitimate that they appear, the more they're going to be able to infiltrate farther into country, because they are so hyper violent.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen some of the videos.
I have unfortunately seen
Yeah.
some of the videos, and that's the one reason that I am scared of the cartels.
Hyper violent.
Yes.
And very demonic.
Yes.
The things that they do.
I'll just, for people that are listening that haven't seen any of those videos, I'll give you an example. I watched somebody halfway buried in the ground being skinned alive.
Yeah, I've taken classes where, similar, where they cut their buddy's face off, put their face on him, they're laughing at him, cut their genitals off, burn them alive. I mean, it doesn't really. There was a guy that had got his own heart cut out in front of him, and then he was eaten in front of him. The stuff that is so demonic and things I can't get out of my head.
Yeah,
I'll never be able to get out of my head. And yeah, it's a scary world because they don't care, but they're trying. They have a business front, right? Those people are still here in Arizona because we are finding those people dead, dismembered behind dumpsters in Gilbert and Chandler.
no shit.
Oh yeah, it's seeping in, but it hasn't reached us yet up here, And they are very pointed on who they do this stuff to.
So is it often, I guess, if is it more often Mexican people, or is it more often white people that that is happening to?
There's no discrimination from what I've seen, other than the fact that if they just cross them,
Okay.
you don't want to talk about them. Like if you get caught, you better just keep your mouth shut, go to prison.
Except it's going to be an easier punishment than dealing with them.
My first ever drug load, I got up on the 40. It was my first day, no kidding. First day K9 on the 40. I'm up there and I pull a guy over, Mexican guy and his friend from Idaho plates, and talk to him. And I just get a weird feeling from him. I asked if I could search his car. Oh yeah, go ahead, man. Search my car. Find 3 kilos of coke. Talk to this guy, and he's like, hey man, like I've never done this before, and he hasn't. We verified. He had to do it because a cartel guy came knocking on his door because his son was in prison, owed them a favor, and his son was still in prison. And because his son owed him a favor, the cartel knocked on his door and said, you're going to do this. You're going to go to South Carolina, North Carolina, one of the two, and deliver these drugs. And he said okay, because they were going to kill his family. And this guy has this guy was a hardworking man, a very nice man. I felt terrible about like having to put him in custody. But what are you going to do?
Yeah.
I can't, you can't willfully as an officer look away from a high class felony of transportation of drugs for sale.
And then if I'm that guy,
we let him go, he's dead.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
before I agree to haul these drugs across the country, they're threatening to kill my family.
yeah.
Well, I can't kill that guy who's threatening to kill my family because then I'll go to jail for murder,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't go to the authorities and tell them like, hey, this dude's threatening my family and wants me to run these drugs because then they'll kill your family.
Yeah, you're dead.
Dude, that is a tough spot to be in.
He took the only route out,
Wow.
hoping that we wouldn't pull him over for a cross country trip. And it just happened to be I'm not kidding, my very first day, my very first 3 or 4 hours on the job as a canine.
So you let him go?
No,
Oh, you didn't
I
let him.
couldn't.
If you let him go, he's dead.
Oh, he's dead because they're
Okay.
gonna think he's working with us.
Gotcha. Okay, so then you confiscated and destroyed the drugs, and then he went to prison for it.
He went to prison for it. He didn't talk to us much more because he said if he gave us any more information, he's dead. He gave us as much information he was allowed to.
Dude, that
And when he went
sucks.
to prison, man, this guy was a class A working individual, came from Mexico, probably illegal, but working a legitimate job, owned a home, had a wife. His son was a piece of shit, did some stuff, went to prison, and because of that, he's now in prison
Dude, that's so
because he
sad.
owed a debt to the.
You got to wonder how many of those instances are happening
Oh,
all over
I don't
the
have to wonder.
place.
We do it all the time.
You find stuff like that all the time.
Oh, dude, it's 40% of 50% of the loads we get are because they were forced to because they owed a debt.
Whoa.
It's pretty bad.
Another thing that guy I mentioned earlier who's embedded with the cartels, I'll have to find his name for you. One thing he says is that they've kind of moved on to hiring Americans to do this type of stuff. Just
Dude,
like,
Special forces guys, big time.
no, no, no,
Uh-huh.
no.
Yeah,
Damn, come on.
yeah. There's a guy that wrote a book. Gosh, I wish I can. He wrote a book. It's a very interesting book. He was a Navy SEAL, and he was doing it for years. And he was getting off on the I'm a Navy SEAL, and he was doing it. And he finally got caught. But you're seeing a lot of those guys, veterans. I mean, I shouldn't just say special forces guys.
Yeah.
Sorry, special forces guys, because it's not all you. Veterans, because it's easy for them.
Yeah.
Because they play the veteran card.
Yeah,
And
cops like veterans.
love
They have
veterans.
respect for them
Yeah,
most of the time.
we call that, yeah, that's qualifying statement, man, because you come up there and on a canine stop or a drug stop, I loved when people used to say, man, I love cops. Thank you for what you're doing. I'm like, man, I got something here. Like, you're automatically telling me how good I am.
Your alarm's going off.
Yeah, or like, hey, dude, I'm a veteran, dude. I totally get what you're doing. Thanks for pulling me over. Like, you get all sorts of crazy shit like
Yeah.
that. But yeah, dude, veterans, dude. Believe it or not. Again, I'm gonna retract my special forces statement because there is this one that I know of. But there was
Is that the Navy SEAL
the
one?
Navy SEAL guy,
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
and
That's-
there might be more, but there's one that I know of. But there is a lot of veterans that are doing it because it's easy, and the cartels seek them out because
yeah. So there's one story that I've heard that this single mom has like 5 kids and she's trying to work 2 jobs to pay for the kids, and then the cartel members, there's obviously recruitment in the cartel. They're pretty organized, so there's these guys that find people like that and then go make them an offer. Hey, if you drive this to this place, we'll give you this much money. And then they do it, and then they say, okay, will you do it again? And then they kind of build it up to like, oh, now they're doing it, twice a week or something for however long. And they get seen at the border, and the border security becomes familiar with them, and eventually starts waving them through, since they work in what's it, Mexicali or Yuma. I think you can go back and forth.
Yeah, you can go back and forth from there. Tucson's got several ports of entry. Yeah, down in California as well.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess there's a lot of that stuff kind of increasing right now, as far as they're starting to hire Americans more
Oh yeah,
to do that, which is wild. Have you run into much of that?
yeah. We have, yeah, 100%. I would say, we do run into a lot of Hispanic Americans, that are just part of the culture. But we have ran into the American that is just doing it because they were recruited. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is a thing. It's big, man. I mean, and there's a business behind it, and we're always behind the curve. The cartels always are ahead of it. They know what we're looking for. That's why we used to look for Oklahoma plates, rentals. Mm-hmm. Oklahoma's a huge hub for the cartel. Drugs run east, money runs west. Things were kind of get dispersed from Oklahoma City, from at least from our area that we had. So I-40 that would connect all the way across, and then hit Oklahoma, New Mexico, that kind of stuff. Uh, Guns were big in Oklahoma, drugs are big, and then they kind of get like pushed out, But you're not going to see a lot of eastern cities that have a lot of meth. You're not going to see that. You're going to see a lot of crack, and so meth kind of stops at a certain point. I don't know why, but you're not going to go to Chicago and see a influx of meth. You're just not.
Black people like crack. They don't like meth.
It kind of seems to be.
Could be.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, but it's cultural too because crack was introduced back in the 80s. There was that huge war on drugs that happened, and we just the farther southwest you live, the more pure you're going to get. Because what are you going to get from the East Coast? Like who's coming over? Canada is a big pusher too of like fentanyl, for example. Because
really?
The Chinese.
Oh, go figure.
Yeah, the Chinese, whatever they triad, what are they? Their mafia, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
Yakuza, or I don't. That's Japanese. I don't. The Chinese, but they run a lot of drug business out of Canada, and you'll get a lot of Eastern Indians that come down in trucks delivering drugs from Canada. You got fentanyl, which is huge in that port, and then they also are pushing it up through the Mexican border as well through obviously. Coyotes and people that are coming through that are trying to pay their way up.
Yeah, all sorts of methods.
Yeah.
Yeah, I work in the commercial trucking industry, and I see actually a lot of Eastern Indian drivers, a lot of Arabic drivers, which is really interesting. So, coming from Canada, huh? They must have gotten to Trudeau. That's what happened.
Yeah.
Oh, let's dive into guns a little bit. Have you caught a lot of like trafficking guns, people running guns?
Personally, I have not.
Anybody you know?
Yeah.
And what's the situation like that? Because I can have 20 AKs in my car legally as an individual with no license or no registration or whatever for those firearms. So how do you find out that they're running it for the purpose of selling it illegally or whatever?
Most of the time, Dan, to be honest, it's dumb criminals that get caught. So they're prohibited possessors.
Oh.
They have, in Arizona, you have weapons misconduct. And one of the provisions in weapons misconduct is having drugs in the car, which makes it a huge deal, owning a gun. I mean, it's the number one thing in Yampai County that will put you in prison immediately is weapons misconduct. Being a prohibited possessor, having drugs, and then having a gun, committing felony and having a gun, which is having drugs in the car, which is a felony.
Yep.
And so that's a lot of what we'll see. And then it's talking to them. Like, why do you have this many guns? Well, I got them from Arizona. I bought them in Arizona. I'm bringing them to Chicago, and I'm going to sell them on the black market. That's a lot of the times that we'll get those type of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how does it work if somebody can legally carry a gun and can legally have marijuana?
That's it's a good question. Nowadays you can. To a certain threshold, you can't be transporting 6 pounds of marijuana, across state lines, have a gun or whatever. There's certain things that you can do. I mean, you have the ability to cultivate 6 plants, and it's been 3 years since I've created policy, so things may have changed. So you can't quote me on Prop 207. I'm not versed on it because I don't do it much anymore. But it used to be 6 plants per adult. You could have up to 2 adults in a house. So that's 12 plants.
Okay.
And each plant can, produce 30 pounds of product. I don't know. I mean, up 10, 20, 30 pounds. So, and if you're going to, and you can transfer some to some people, but what do you do with that? Can you, if you don't want it at your house, you want to bring it to Uncle Bud's house.
Yeah.
Uncle Bud. Yes. And you have your gun in the car. Does that constitute a gun crime? I think that they're very more, they're looking at that a little bit more closely and just seeing what's the point, why'd you have that gun,
Right?
And what was it for? Marijuana has become such a taboo subject that a lot of attorneys nowadays don't want to touch it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, especially in Arizona, California, Nevada.
I get it.
And so it's going to go to the wayside. But there's going to be some instances that happens.
So if somebody's if they carry a gun on a regular basis, and then one day they want to go to their friend's house and take a pack of joints with them, and they get pulled over.
You're okay.
You're cool.
You're cool, man.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
So then,
As long as you're over 21.
Right, right. As long as you're
and
following
you're
all
not
of the
smoking in
regular
the
law.
car.
Yeah, exactly.
Because then once you smoke in the car, that's the thing with Prop 207. It's not a law, right? It's a proposition. So it's something that's put in by the government. The government, local government, has said we're going to allow this, right? So the federal government doesn't recognize that. The state has recognized that it's a proposition, and it can be changed next election cycle. It can change. Like people can do a new proposition 208 saying well, marijuana is no longer illegal, and so it's a proposition, and so all it's saying is like we're not going to prosecute. We understand the federal government doesn't care or does care, and will prosecute, but Arizona doesn't want to. So it's not necessarily a law, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so we just don't do it because Arizonans said we don't want
It's a
that.
waste of our time or
It's a waste of
whatever.
our time.
Yeah.
And so, but that's I think the beauty of democracy sometimes, is that.
Yep.
Because I don't think marijuana is the scourge of the earth. I don't think,
Right.
I mean, it's like having a couple drinks or,
Right.
whatever. I mean, I think marijuana is one of the dumbest things that we've enforced for the longest time.
Yeah.
I really do.
And anything can be dangerous in the wrong amount.
It can. It just, marijuana, unfortunately, helped law enforcement for a long period of time get into situations that we normally couldn't get in to solve bigger crimes.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just have those people that just were prudes and never did shit, and marijuana is such a bad thing; it's going to destroy the earth, and that kind of thing.
Those are the people that have never used marijuana.
Exactly. Well, because I have, and that's the reason why I had to join the military. So.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah.
Go to war, go to jail.
Well, no, it was I had a choice, man. I believe it or not, the dumbest thing I ever did in my life, and I'll put it out there. I don't care, but I was going to join the Phoenix Police Department. I got a call from a buddy and said we can get you in before the hiring freeze, but she's gonna meet you down at a local business. It's the background investigator, and she's gonna do some preliminaries. And I was like, all right, man, sounds good. And my buddy was like, you never smoked weed before? And I was like, no, I haven't. And he's like, you need to do it before you become a cop. And I said, you know what? I think I do. And I was always
Whoops.
Yeah, and I was always of the like mind is like, how can I enforce something I don't understand? And I've always been that way, man. Kind of liberal minded. I've always been. I would never have called myself a Republican till late. I was always liberal minded, and I was like, you're right, man. I can't judge people and I've never done it, and so I tried it.
That's hilarious.
And then she asked me, and I'm an extremely honest person, and she goes, "When's the last time you smoked weed?" I was like, "Last night." And I was excited to tell her.
First time.
First time.
It was great. I had to do it before I got hired.
Yeah.
Wow.
And she goes, unfortunately, the rules of the land at the time were you have to wait 3 years. And I was like, what do I have to do for 3 years? And the military had 4 years. And I was like, well, I guess by the time I get out of the military, I have a year, more. And so I'd be good. So that was the reason why I joined the military, to be honest, was I smoked weed.
Okay.
Super
okay.
stupid.
So I joined the military when I was 17 with my parents' blessing because I had graduated high school and wanted to be a police officer. And I was like, college doesn't really seem like my thing, so I'm going to go do this, get this under my belt, come back, get hired on. Thank God I was talked out of becoming a military police officer. No offense, guys. But I came back and ended up going to motorcycle mechanics school because I saw a friend of mine smoking weed. He became my roommate, and he was always offering it, and it's like, no, man, I'm going to be a cop. And then it shifted over to, okay, well, now I'm using the GI Bill to go to school, and I can get drug tested at any point. And if I fail my drug test, not only do I get kicked out of school, but I have to pay back all the money that the GI Bill paid into my schooling to the government. So that was a pretty strong, no, I'm not going to do that. So once I graduated, got a job in that industry, like 3 weeks into the job, I was like, okay, I think I can try it now. I think I'm good to go. I'm not beholden by the GI Bill, and so I freaking tried it.
Yep.
And then like 2 weeks later, I'm putting together a side-by-side frame, and I got a piece of metal in my eye, and I got freaking drug tested because I had to go to Concentra. And they're like, oh, well, you know what you can do? You can do this, what they call it, rehab. You can go to some rehab class, or you can find a new job. And so I was like, I don't want to be here. I'm going to find a new job. So, and then I started smoking all the time after that.
Well, that was the thing, dude. I mean, the weed that's ruining people's lives. I mean, they're having to change the test now for police because it's now legal. I mean, how are you going to judge somebody? I mean, the workplace can say you can no longer smoke weed while you're there. Okay, well, that's fair.
Well, but even still, the way that they test, it's going to be in your urine for months.
100%. There's no way to test for outside of you walk up to someone, their blood shot red, and they're smoke billowing out of there's no way, and they're just
Yeah.
they have not come up with a good test. But private businesses, private local agencies can say you can't do it. And what the problem was in the beginning was when we were doing our policy stuff was they were trying to say that we have to regulate our spouses. And I was like, you can't fucking
No,
tell me,
yeah.
and my wife Wendy doesn't do it.
For the
Obviously,
people don't understand,
yeah,
if you're a police officer, that means your spouse can't use cannabis.
correct. And I was just like, you can't do that. Those are people that didn't take the same oath I did, and that was a big point of contention in the beginning. And there was a lot of debate back and forth, and that got decided outside of my pay range. That wasn't something I got to decide. I would just put my 2 cents in. I was just like, I don't think that this is legit. You're infringing on what that person may have voted for. Because there was police officers I knew that wives smoked and wanted to do it freely, and their husbands were. I mean, part of the questioning is like when we go through, when I went through, have you lived with somebody that smokes marijuana? And you would say, okay, yeah, my brother did, and my roommate did when I got out of the military. And they're like, what have you done? And I told them I didn't like it. Well, what'd you do? And I was like, well, I can't move out. I'm like broke. I'm getting GI. I'm getting my post 9/11 payment. They're paying me $1,100, a month. What am I going to find for that? I got to pay rent for food, and I got to, my car payment and everything else. And
Yeah.
so, and I was able to explain it, but they wanted me to tell them. I moved out and told them
called the
like,
cops.
yeah, screw you guys, man. The cops are coming. Like, but I'm like, I never felt bad about weed, man. I just used it, like I said. You talked about loopholes before. It wasn't a loophole, but it was just something I was able to use to get in the car. At the very beginning of my career, I cited for marijuana, and when I say very beginning, it was like first couple years, because I was told to, and I was a brand new officer. And this is what you got to do. And then after that, it became very quick to a lot of us who have the same mindset, or get out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Dumb.
man, like I got to take it. Get out of here.
Yeah.
I mean, that was it. And it just wasn't. It is was. I mean, it's something that I didn't believe needed to be regulated. Like methamphetamines was chemical based.
Yep.
Heroin. People were dying in heroin, and now we got fentanyl. I mean, that kind of stuff where I believe it needs regulation. Marijuana, I believe, is just the dumbest thing in the world.
Yeah, I liken it to coffee
100%.
because it grows, it changes your
Mushrooms,
awareness.
I believe mushrooms should be illegal.
Legal.
Legal.
Yeah.
Yeah, legal. 100%. I believe people should do mushrooms, psilocybin, marijuana, things that come naturally from the earth. If you want to chew on a freaking cocaine leaf or a cot or whatever it is, if you want to do that, man, it comes from the earth. I believe God gave that to us for a certain reason. I do believe, you got stuff that the Native Americans have used.
The peyote.
Peyote. Yeah. There's other stuff, some cactus and stuff that they do.
Yeah, that one's called San Pedro.
Yeah. So
mescaline based.
Mescaline based. What's the one that's down in Mexico that they do?
They have
Joe Rogan's
they
ayahuasca.
have ayahuasca that's South American grown.
Yeah, South American.
But it's legal in Mexico and it's legal in Canada.
Dude,
under therapeutic use.
I believe that there's so many benefits to these things, and you hear time and time again from people that are like-minded that it's changed their life. They were alcoholics. They were, and it's changed their life. And the thing is like you can't argue it, man. And like when people in my position try to argue that, it's now you're stuck so far in the culture that you no longer, in my opinion, are intellectual, and it's hard to take your opinion because you're just speaking the words.
Yeah, you're jumping on the bandwagon.
Yeah, you're speaking the words, man, because unfortunately, man, everyone else is saying wrong. Like, and you can't discredit, a guy with a doctorate degree that, cured cancer or whatever, I don't know, that went down and did freaking ayahuasca and had a life-changing experience and no longer drinks alcohol anymore, and he's the happiest he's ever been. And it's like, well, how many stories do I have to hear of that before I'm like, okay, well, something's up with this.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's been a big point of contention, I guess with my family mostly, because I've experienced some of those things, and I believe that there's a purpose for it, and I also believe that it can easily be abused and manipulated in a spiritual context,
Sure.
which is probably the most dangerous sense. But yeah, I definitely am a supporter of those. So as far as like mushrooms or LSD or whatever these psychoactives are, how often are dogs trained for those?
Zero, man.
Zero.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's going to be one or two that are out there that they're going to say that, but we don't care. That's not something that was ever on the radar. You
That's so
know,
wild.
yeah, we're going to find those pretty much like supplement too. Like, it's just not something that, was on our, if we find a bunch of mushrooms, that's just one of those weird stories,
Yeah.
that you talk about. Like, yeah, I got all these mushrooms and stuff. And I always,
At the same time, it's still a felony, right?
it was.
It's not anymore.
No, I'm sorry. I shouldn't say it was. It is.
It is a felony still to
Yes, in
possess
Arizona.
psychedelics. Yeah.
But I believe, I mean, there's a lot of legislation that's going through.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some doctors that have been doing it since the 70s and 60s, and I'm looking forward. I personally am, as a police officer talking on this podcast, it's an active police officer, am looking forward to the day that I can microdose and try it, because I do believe that there's, psychological benefits to it after listening to everybody, and I believe that in our profession it's needed.
Yeah.
Because happiness goes out the window, and then that's the reason why we start seeing the over abuse of power and then the disconnection from society. I do believe that. I don't think that we need officers on the duty high on mushrooms. That's not what I'm saying. That's the dumbest thing in the world. I'm just saying that people need to have some time off, and they need to. There's therapies that are out there that I believe are legitimate.
Yeah.
I do, 100%. You're not coming back from South America with ayahuasca hangover where you're going to get it with acid, for example. It sits in your fat cells, and then next thing you know, 10 years down the road, you're seeing a dragon while you're driving your patrol cars.
I don't know that that's even factual. I think
don't
I think
know.
it's different. I think it's the spinal fluid.
Is it?
I
I thought
don't-
it was fat cells.
I don't think it's the fat cells. I know marijuana stays in the fat cells, and that's why it sticks for so long. And the fatter you are, the longer it stays. But the LSD, the only way to test for it is by doing a spinal tap.
Right, I know that.
So I'm pretty sure that it's in the spinal fluid that it stays. Because the story that I've heard the most is that somebody will crack their back and then they'll have like a
Interesting, because the studies I've read
experience.
was always been like you might have that body metabolism going on that day, and it's like, oh shit. But you know what?
fascinating.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I got to do a little bit more research, I guess.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I'm not sure on that. That's interesting stuff. At the same time, with the psychedelic stuff, you see places like Portland that have something in common with it, where they've decriminalized or legalized it all or whatever, and then Portland is kind of falling apart right now. Not that those two are, I guess, related, but I understand based on experience the potential for people to go off the deep end. And that's, a lot of people will do psychedelics and then they'll go vegan. And oftentimes I think people like that, it's really hard to generalize. I really actually can't generalize, but for me that's kind of missing the point of it, is going hard in one direction on the spectrum. Rather, it my experiences have, what's the word? Have pushed me more toward balance than anything. And I don't think that's, a way to be balanced in your life. So,
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think that there is some of that. I mean, the psychedelics people can take to excess, and I think that they're just going to be those people, but I don't think we're ever going to get rid of that in this world.
yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, we're in that world. I mean, I mean, you're a Christian man, I'm a Christian man, where we both, believe in God and Jesus, and I think people are going to go as hard as they can sometimes,
Yep.
and it's a season of life, and it's just, some people just can't get out of it because it just becomes such a part of them, and then other people figure out, like, well, that was a season, I'm glad it's over, and I'm going to regulate it, and some
Yeah.
people just can't regulate it, and they have to get rid of it altogether.
Yeah.
know?
The AA, some of the AA folks.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How long have you been a Christian?
Oh, shoot, man. I would say since 2010, I would call myself a Christian, but a devout Christian, about a year.
Right on.
Yeah.
And so what happened around 2010 that led you to be a Christian? Were you not raised in church or anything like that?
No, we did go to church, but not raised, man. We went when it was appropriate, holidays and stuff. 2010, I got out of the military. I was searching for a job, which was in law enforcement, which wasn't happening, and I was hanging out with a lot of people because I was with my brother at the time and people that were completely different. I had changed politically while in the military as far as my um, values have went, and what was the focus, and I felt lost, and so I started not denying Christ at that time. Like saying, "No, I believe Jesus Christ exists, but I don't know how I'm supposed to do that."
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know the Bible, I didn't know what I was supposed to do, but I wouldn't deny.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say a Christian
Yeah.
as in every sense. I would say in the last year, I've become that.
And
Finally.
what changed that?
Did we my wife and I opened a business, my job, I think seeing how the world actually is, like I said, those world views that opened up where I started getting my own thoughts about like people weren't shaping me anymore. Like, whereas like, I don't necessarily hate these people. I don't need to do this. Like I started becoming more. I've always been an honest person. I've always been open and honest as far as I know. And I believe that that's the persona that most people would know me as. But just I remember telling my wife, she was always devout. She always has been. She's been from day one. I turned to her and I said, "We need to go to church, man." Like, and it was something that was just I was miserable. I was going home and like I was looking forward to every weekend just getting tanked.
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna watch some movies, get drunk, and then I'd argue with my wife and get mad at the dogs. I was mad at everybody. Everybody was like my enemy.
Yeah.
And I just remember just feeling depressed. Like this can't be what's meant for this. And I knew there was something missing. The only thing that I felt logical that could be missing was my love for Jesus and God, and I think that we went to church that first day, and I remember going home being like, I feel different. And then it took me a couple months, and I got baptized,
Yeah.
and then I started praying more, and I just started feeling better.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah,
That's great.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, cool. Um, I had a, I was raised Christian, and then, went into the military and went to the Middle East, and during that time, kind of, I couldn't answer everybody's questions who I was like evangelizing to, and so I started to question what I knew and how I knew it, and then additionally, I had the thought of like, okay, well, those people are here defending their country, and we're, the potentially unwanted guests. They're willing to kill me just as much as I'm willing to kill them. So who's right and who's wrong? Because for me, it's about God and people, and for them, it's about God. And
mm-hmm.
my ignorance at the time pulled me away from Christianity, not recognizing that they're that's a whole different subject. But
Mm-hmm.
the way that the Muslims relate to God and people who are not Muslim, rather than the way that Christians relate to non-Christians.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, it pulled me away from there, and so I went and studied other stuff and checked out other things, put my interest in all different belief systems to see what's going on, and that's kind of when I had found psychedelics, and it opened up a whole new understanding of how the world is and what the world is. And
Sure.
so I traveled that like hippie path for several years, and
Mm-hmm.
then found a lot of people that are like stuck in that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, okay, well, this isn't any different. If you didn't get the message from the psychedelics,
You're still using it as a crutch.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's the same thing as being an alcoholic.
Sure.
You're just, making it just looks different. So then got into a relationship. Relationship got so bad that I, asked for help, and my parents actually came and prayed with me and stuff like that. And immediately I had this like relief,
Yeah.
like a sense of peace, and it lasted for several days. And then a few months later, went and did the Zion trip,
Hmm.
the men's trip, and got baptized there, and it's just been different since.
That's
So
cool, man.
yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah,
So,
it's just different journeys, man. Like I said, it took me several years or just to recognize my anger because it got so commonplace for me just to say how much I hate that person or like I was mad at everybody, man. Like you freaking I got to the restaurant first and you got after me and you got to order before me. I was just like, fuck you. You know, I was just like, who are you, man? Like I've been here, like look at me. And I was never that person, you know, never. I was always kind of just like let's just go with the flow, like whatever. You know, I always fought. When I was younger, I fought a lot. You know, I did a lot of stuff in the military. Fought, you know, everything else. I learned my lessons, you know, like I didn't want to get necessarily hurt anymore, break my hand, or do anything more. So I stopped fighting and started listening. But I was always kind of like just kind of go with the flow thing, you know. But then it turned completely different, man. Like I needed to manage everything. I was, you know, got to go my way or the highway, and it was just like miserable, man.
Yeah.
Miserable.
Now, as far as working with other men that are police officers and women, I suppose too. What's the ratio of men to women roughly where you work as far as officers and detectives?
Dude, 99% of 1%.
Really?
Men
Okay.
to women right now.
Right on. So then, out of all those people, how many of those people you'd say you trust with your life, or ones that are like, oh, that's a dirty cop, or I don't know if I'd trust that guy?
I've had two in my 12 years with the sheriff's office, 11 years with the sheriff's office. Two instances where I would say I couldn't trust them, and both of them, one was arrested and the other was let go, which I'll have to talk to you offline because it's like kind of sensitive subject, but
Sure.
it's he should have been arrested.
Yeah.
But I would say the majority of them I can trust myself with, like you know, my life with. There's others that I'm like, I trust you as a person, but if things hit the fan,
Yeah.
I don't want you around.
Yep.
You know, like, so I mean, there's definitely that. You gotta know your surroundings, and so I surrounded myself with some people early on in my career, and you know, I continued surrounding myself with them, and you know, I've gotten in my fair share of fights, and some
Like just like fist fights or arguments or both.
it's both, man.
Yeah.
Fist fights. We've been shot at. We've been all sorts of, and we've come out alive. But a lot of it had to do with the calmness of the people I had around me.
Yeah.
You know, because we all calmed each other down. We all had a different experience to bring. We weren't kind of jumping to, you know, weird conclusions and doing weird stuff, and we just handled business. And I contribute that to, you know, me coming out on top with, you know, I think one broken hand, and that's about it.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
pretty good.
Yeah.
Over 12 years, that's
Yeah.
pretty good. Just to finish up the topic of the sovereign citizen stuff, I think we were talking before, and you said you don't necessarily have to have your license on you, but you have to have a way to identify yourself.
Yeah.
So if I have a license, but it's not with me, and I know my driver's license number, which I actually do, I can tell a cop that, and it probably won't be an issue.
Correct. Yeah.
Right on.
Correct. Yeah.
Because that's checking the legal box of identifying.
Yeah. You just need to
oneself.
identify yourself, man.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there was always that, like, well, you got to show me an identification. Well, you can refuse, because it's civil. But you do, when a cop asks you what your name is, your date of birth, you do have to recognize that he's asking for identification. That identification can come verbally, and then we can check that and then figure that out. So, yeah.
Right on. Well, all right. For Arizonans specifically, let's go into this. This is a fun one for Arizona. We got some cool gun laws. So who can carry a gun?
Everybody except for felons.
Except for felons.
And people under protection orders that are specifically have a provision in there that say they cannot.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. And
We can go in deep. Let's not go too deep into it. But you know, you got kids that under 18 and handguns. They can't buy them. They
Yeah.
can be gifted them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to
know.
be 21 to buy a handgun and to buy handgun ammo.
Sure, but you can be gifted it under that. You
Yep.
know, but carrying it might cause you some pain.
I've been there.
Yeah, you know, you have to, you know, prove, and so that's the reason why I don't want to dive too much into that, because it's subjective somewhat. But if we stay in the realm, like, yeah, you know, felons and people with protective orders and things
Right.
like that.
Yeah, just as a general sense. Yeah, I was lucky enough to get gifted a handgun.
Sure.
After being 18 and you know, open carried all over the place.
Sure.
Had a couple couple instances, but that was because I was, speeding on a motorcycle too fast. And they're like, "You're what age? You're carrying this gun?"
Well, speaking, my motorcycle stopped working, so I got to get you over there to take a look at it.
Oh
So
no, what kind of bike you got?
I think it's a battery issue. I got a 650Z, the 50th anniversary edition.
Okay.
Suzuki. Yeah.
Yeah, sweet.
Yeah,
I
it's
got a
pretty cool,
Suzuki 650 right
Yeah.
on. All right. What guns can all these people carry? What guns are we allowed to carry?
Well, man, I mean, we can carry everything in Arizona depending on what license you have.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I mean, we have that big contention with automatics and stuff. I mean,
Is there a contention around that?
well, I mean, for some people,
Okay.
I mean, there's certain groups of people that think every assault rifle is automatic, and
Those idiots.
yeah, the ones
Those uninformed, unwilling to educate themselves.
Exactly.
Bastards. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, aside from those people, we can carry any gun,
yeah,
and
certain guns require certain licenses,
such as
obviously.
a fully automatic. An actually
Correct.
fully automatic gun, you have to have a certain
100%
license
suppressor, all sorts of stuff, and you can
Suppressor.
have that. And I'm not the best person to talk to about all this stuff. There's some gun enthusiasts out there. There's certain classes that you can go, or class levels that you can have, where you can build your own that have built-in silencers, automatic versus semi-automatic. More lightweight, the shorter barrel, all sorts of stuff that goes into that. And it's federally regulated. Obviously, we send in our application to ATF, and they, as long as you're good to go in Arizona, you can do it.
Yeah, that's the thing. I was going to say, Arizona specifically, uniquely, if you build the gun here, you can build it to be automatic.
Sure.
I was under the impression that was with no regulations, or like you don't have to register it, or you don't have to get approval for that.
From what I believe, ATF does have to approve that.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I wasn't
Yeah.
aware of that. Right on. And I covered this one earlier. You don't really teach much about the Second Amendment in the constitutional class because it's more about searches, seizures, stuff like that. I believe that people have the right to defend their own life, whether it's written into law or not, in whatever capacity they can. But you see in a lot of different places in this country, not necessarily in Arizona, but all over the country, there's these instances that take place where people, if they had a gun, they'd be alive, or their Second Amendment is being taken away, or the people that believe AR stands for assault rifle, and it's just once again uneducated people.
Yeah.
Trying to formulate a question around that.
When can somebody protect themselves against a police officer? Maybe.
That's one I want to get into. Yeah, actually. You have to articulate the self-defense. So I guess the question would be, like, if you legally own a gun and somebody's coming into your house, like a no-knock warrant or something, and they don't announce themselves, or they do and you don't hear them, or if it's muffled through the door, I mean, that seems like it could cause a lot of problems.
It does.
It does. So, I have the legal right to defend my home from somebody entering it without my permission. I don't know it's a cop for whatever reason, especially with red flag laws. My neighbor doesn't like me. They say, hey, this guy's doing this dangerous stuff. And then, and then they come and try and get into the house.
It's such a taboo subject, as you stated. I mean, we get these calls and people are like, this guy's going to kill himself. This girl's going to kill himself. He's said things like he's going to shoot up the neighborhood or the school or whatever. How do we verify that? I mean, sometimes we have to take it at face value and go and check. And we knock on your door, and we're there innocently knocking on your door. We don't have a SWAT team outside, and then you just shoot us through the door. Well, that's on you.
Yeah.
If we show up in plain clothes and I got a rifle outside with nothing identifying myself as an officer, and I'm holding a rifle and I'm knocking on your door aggressively and you shoot me, I think that's on me. I think, and the courts kind of agree with that. The no-knock stuff, I kick in your door and I run in there and we got several people. There's a lot of stuff that's going against no-knock warrants, and we have to now specify what it is, and the judge then has to agree for certain things. There's a lot of things moving towards no-knock warrants as being completely asinine because, you as a person, do you focus in, most of the time that people are doing the warrants and serving the warrants, SWAT officers are in full gear, they got helmets, they say SWAT. But what happens if they're HSI? What happens if they're FBI? What happens when they're plain clothes and they kick the door open and they do? How many people are looking at that little badge in the chest? You know, like there's a lot of study because a lot of police officers shoot other police officers in active shooter situations because they're not seeing the badge.
Oh wow.
And so why am I putting you at a higher standard than I'm putting other officers that are allowed to shoot officers?
Yeah.
And not go get the death penalty or go to jail or prison or whatever.
That's a great question.
You know, and so I think the courts are looking at it. I mean, you're looking at also the Breonna Taylor situation. You know, obviously Breonna Taylor's a little bit different. There was actual crimes going on there, and it wasn't like the.
Is that the one in Tennessee?
Was it Tennessee? I can't remember the state.
The Christian school shooting?
No, Breonna Taylor. She was with her drug dealer boyfriend in an apartment, and then they were shooting at each other through the doors, and Breonna Taylor got shot and killed.
Oh.
And another agent or police officer was shot and killed also during that. And they're indicting, they're going back through and then re-indicting the new, the officer that killed Breonna Taylor. But it was a no-knock thing, you know, and there was a legitimate reason to be there. But everyone was saying they chose the wrong house, which ended up, I don't believe, being right. And I think the shots came from inside the apartment first. And so, blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, there's just one thing after another.
I mean, based on what I've heard, that sounds fair. Not fair.
Yeah.
But it sounds like I would back that shot that was
you would
taken.
back. And it has been backed, and he was exonerated. But I think
good.
he's going back through on civil rights issues now because
geez.
of the black and white thing. And so,
No way.
Yeah.
Come on, man. They just won't leave it alone.
They won't. But like I said, so I don't necessarily agree with no-knock warrants at the moment because I don't know if we've figured out a way that makes it fair for everyone. And I'm saying, like, I don't want to make it fair for people that I know want to kill me.
Right.
Which is kind of it's kind of a dumb thing to say. So
No, but you want to protect the Constitution and people's constitutional rights because you love this country and you love what it stands for and you took the oath for a reason.
Right.
But at the end of the day, which one's more important, catching the bad guy or retaining the constitutional rights in this country?
And I guess it depends. It's situational.
That's a hard one.
It's a hard one, man, because if it's Charles Manson, it's like, fuck him, man. I want to cheat the system as much as I can. You know, I'll tap your phones and pretend like I didn't. You know, whatever it is. If I know you're the one that did it, and you're killing 30 people, you know, a day or whatever it is, like, but that's the thing. Like, the law's in place because there are going to be those people, but the majority of the people aren't going to do that. And then how do you regulate the in between?
Yeah,
you can't.
Yeah, it's situational.
It's hard.
You know about Charles Manson and the LSD, right?
Oh yeah.
Oh man, that's a
trip, man.
Dude, trip.
Yeah,
that's wild.
It's
scary.
The fact that he went through those trials and they did that and he ended up doing what he did, like, I believe the CIA has a lot to do with it.
Oh yeah. Do you know about the book Chaos?
I haven't read it. I know about it. And that's the one. Is that the one with the Johns?
Yeah,
with the prostitutes.
That's part of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot in that book. It's very.
I want to read it. I haven't. I want to read it.
It's on audio. If you do audio.
Okay. Yeah.
It's easier, much easier that way.
Good. Okay.
The guy that's reading it's got a decent voice, so it's not hard to listen to or anything like that. Man, so what about CCW? What does a CCW get somebody here? Which is for people who don't know, concealed weapons permit.
Right. Nothing. I mean, it's just kind of like
here it
a
doesn't
paper.
matter.
Yeah. You know, a lot of people will tell us, like, hey, man, I got a CCW. I'm like, great. Well, you don't need it.
Don't care. Yeah, you don't need it.
You don't need it, man. As long as you tell me there's a gun in your vehicle, it's in the glove box underneath your seat, you can conceal carry in Arizona all you want.
Now, I don't have to tell you there's a gun in my vehicle, right?
Yes, you do.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, and it's your duty, actually, and it's in Arizona revised statute.
Really?
Yeah, to disclose that you have a gun in your vehicle.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, and so the officer is somewhat supposed to ask, not somewhat, they are supposed to ask, is there a weapon in the vehicle? And you're supposed to say yes or no. But it is your duty as a citizen to inform that officer that there's a firearm in your vehicle.
So what if having to memorize all these laws is taken away from my pursuit of happiness? Can't I be exonerated from any crime?
I wish, man.
I know, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I know. I wish, dude. I wish.
Because you got laws that are changing. You got propositions that change from every election cycle.
Especially gun laws.
It's got to be hard to keep up on. And I mean, if you're a gun person, you're up on that stuff. It's
right.
For the most
and
part.
Let me preface this, like the previous statement is, you're supposed to inform. Now, it only turns criminal if I ask you and you say no.
Right. Okay.
But you're obligated as a citizen to inform me. Now, if I don't ask you and then I find out later, that's on me.
Okay.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
I can't bring you to jail for it because, you know, you didn't lie to me, you weren't withholding information. but that's
It's generally best practice for a
yes,
citizen to volunteer that information.
correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. So CCW can't that allow you to carry in more places, like into a place that serves alcohol, something like that?
You know, I wish I could speak on that a little bit better, Andy, but you know, I don't know because you know the chapter 4 with the alcohol stuff, and I you know, you might be more versed than I am on that because I just never really cared about the CCW in my opinion. Because for me, it's like we're in Arizona. As long as you're not a felon,
Don't need it.
dude, I would rather have you have a weapon because we're not going to be able to get on scene, and if you're
sure.
going to be the first person, like
You're your own first line of defense.
absolutely,
Everybody is.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. So what about the police being misused on a larger scale, like being weaponized against the people, against the citizens, mostly through policy and politics, right?
Well, we saw that during COVID.
Yep.
And that was pretty embarrassing for all of us in the profession. That's obviously happening. It's a problem, and it's an increasing problem because I don't know where the line is anymore.
How are they doing it though? How are they weaponizing police? And like, I guess the COVID example would be, hey, we're making this emergency policy that you have to enforce businesses to close. Is that a good example, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it was a great example. We didn't see a lot of that in Arizona, obviously, at the time. You know, we might, if it comes again, with the new one. But we saw that across the country in California, you know, New Jersey, New York, all these places, Washington, going into synagogues, going into churches, outdoor churches, places, you know, like arresting people for. And, you know, I don't know the motivation because I never had that put on us. You know, we were fortunate enough to have a leadership that said we're not going to do this. This is unconstitutional, and so we never had to deal with it. I already made up my mind that if that was coming across, I would. There was two choices I had: either I was going to quit, or I was going to pretend to do my job, and then go tell these people, get out of here. The other law enforcement's coming, and they're going to have to actually enforce this stuff. I'm given the opportunity to leave. You know, and those are the two choices I felt I had.
Yeah.
You know, because one of the things was I felt guilty if I left because then you have that person that actually cares about it, and then I'm giving up my position of authority. But then there's also that existential kind of crisis moment where you're like, I'm a sellout and I don't want to do this. Now I'm a government stooge and I don't want to be that person.
Yeah.
And so I made that really early on in this, and but you started seeing people were being threatened with their jobs and their pension. They got 15, 16 years on. They got 4 more years to go. What do you think they're going to do?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to go kick the guy out of the freaking gym or arrest him or whatever. And it's like, that's a sad moment.
Yeah.
But, I mean, they're also looking at it as like, I mean, what do you do to those guys? They got family. They got,
Right.
I mean,
Yeah,
who's at fault here?
Yeah, it sucks either way you spin it.
Sucks. I think the police chiefs. I think the top. You know, I think the sheriffs that did that. You know, across the nation, the governors, the politicians that did that, and then put those people in that position. I think are at fault.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think we should have repercussions for those people? If so, what kind?
Yeah. Yes and no. I don't know. This is a touchy one.
For sure.
Yeah, I do. It depends on how far it went, man. Because you saw some of those ones where they were like busting down doors, going into churches, and arresting the pastors and stuff.
I didn't see any of that.
Oh yeah,
that's
we had
terrible.
a couple of them that went around in businesses, shutting businesses down. I think monetarily, because a lot of us have vicarious liability, so our agency takes liability for us, right? They assume liability. I think that those businesses that got shut down based on these stupid policies, I think they, 100% owe them some compensation, whatever it means. I don't think jail time. It was such a new situation. I mean, novel virus, right? So new situation that we're in, and these people are freaking out. I had cops I worked with that were freaking out. You know, like they were just like, I mean, we were getting written up if we didn't wear masks. I wear glasses. So I can't.
It fogs up.
It fogs up, man. So what's more important to me? You know, I just decided I'd get the freaking virus, and it took almost a year and a half before I got it, and I got it pretty bad.
Yeah.
You know, but I was in situations I needed to see.
Yeah, for sure.
You know,
Seems pretty important.
Important, I thought.
So you got people putting in these emergency policies, whether it's at the federal or the state level or the CDC apparently can, well, they can't, but apparently they're putting out this information that says, oh, we need to do this, we need to do that. So then all of a sudden everybody's following in suit.
Mm-hmm.
So as a citizen, who's required to follow these policies under the law, actually?
I mean, that's a good question. I mean, because you had sheriffs, you had governors telling them, like, we're not going to follow federal.
Yeah.
We're not going to do it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but look at the federal law for marijuana. It's still illegal.
Yeah.
And Arizona can say, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
I think that there's certain protections, like, and I'm not smart enough to understand at this moment, that the government sees as like a fight to fight, and others that they don't. And I think that some of those are that, and I don't think the CDC had any, personally, had any power to do what they did.
No,
we accepted it.
Correct.
Correct. And I don't know why.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Fear.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously fear.
Yeah.
But I mean, fear controls everything. I've never been that fearful of anything that I haven't been able to sit down and rationally think like, okay, hold on a second. But I mean, obviously people were doing, I mean, I go into the local grocery stores and I'm getting chased down by people saying, where's your mask at? And it's just like, yeah, man, like, what are you talking about? Like, we know it was all BS, right? And
Exactly.
you sat down rational, you're rational about it. And
Yep.
I wore it for a while, and I'm like, there's no way this is fucking working.
Right.
I was coughing in my hand and like over my mouth, and it was getting wet. And I'm like,
if you can smell a fart, you can get a disease.
This is stupid.
Or the one where they do the big vape thing. They do a vape cloud.
Yeah, and it
blow
comes
the
right
vape
out.
cloud right through it. Yeah, it's freaking stupid. But I think it's more about suppression and getting people to do what you say rather than.
Well, they proved it, man.
Yeah,
they proved that they can control us through that. And I think that's the scary part, because the next time that's going to be worse.
Well, it's scary. It's scary, kind of. But then what it also did was illuminate how they're trying to control us and that they're trying to control us.
Right.
So then a lot of people who didn't know before, now they know, and next time they're not going to buy into it.
I'm hoping that's the case.
Yeah,
I really am.
I hope so too. Yeah, yeah. So in Marbury versus Madison, I think it's some legal pretense or legal pretense. They say that any law that is repugnant to the Constitution is null and void.
Mm-hmm.
And so my question would be, of these emergency policies that come out of the federal level, is that repugnant to the Constitution, or is it a for your safety thing? Meanwhile, we the people built the government to serve us, and now it's regulating us.
Yeah,
Sorry, it's a big question.
It is a big question, but I just don't trust the government. I'm not somebody that's ever going to protect the government. Somebody that served the government just like you did.
Yeah.
Somebody that I believed when I went into the military, I was serving the just cause. I'm not saying I had any insight into any of the stuff that's going on at the top, which I didn't. I was, a service member at the low level, E4. I didn't learn a lot of the stuff that goes on there, but you also did learn how the government functioned.
Yeah. If you can see all the garbage at the lowest levels, then it's probably not much better going up.
Well,
the
I
chain.
mean, look at how they use money, right? I mean, it was a use it or lose it policy. I mean, in logistics, when I was in the beginning, it was just like, we have $300,000 left. If we don't use it, we're going to lose it.
Yeah, next year you won't
so let's
get
just
that.
buy all, and they just frugally bought all sorts of whatever bullshit they wanted to.
Yeah.
And at top dollar, top, because they just, and so that you start looking in that, and it was just kind of, government started seeming a little bit ridiculous. Yeah, and I mean, it just, I guess to your question, and not trying to beat around the bush, is the government overreached, and there was no reason other than to prove to us and the party at the time that they could do what they could do.
Yeah.
And there was an obvious, there was an obvious ire there. There was an obvious hate. There was an obvious bias. There was an obvious point to it. And it was unclear at the time, because it's so hard as someone who's rational, I believe I am, to necessarily just vilify everything they're saying about this novel virus and just say like, okay, well, I'm not going to believe anything you're saying. I don't want to be that. I don't want to be Alex Jones for the Sandy Hook stuff. I don't
Yeah,
want. I have to see what's going to go on first. I don't know. Like, how can I make a rational decision on this?
exactly.
And so you wait a year, and then year two, everyone, like you're like, okay, this is horseshit.
Yep.
And I've been living in like squalor, and like my quality of life sucks. Everything I'm doing sucks. I'm paying $12,000 a month for my business. Where I used to pay 4,000. I'm barely and I'm not being, that's honest answers. Those are, I'm 11,500 and some dollars a month I'm paying for my business.
What changed as far as like what
Interest
you're paying
rates.
for?
Interest rates. It's on a
What?
variable, and
Is this
so
like a business license you have to pay for?
no, so it was a SBA loan. So there was different classifications, and when we first went in, it was on a variable rate. So it kind of went with the whatever the
Economic ebb and
economic
flow.
ebb and flow was going, and when we first started, we were paying 5,000-6,000 bucks a month, which was doable. I mean, we were doing well, and now we're paying twice that, 12,000 a month, and we're paying twice as much in interest than we are in principal. And so, and that's the thing, and you're seeing small business die, and it's like my wife and I are fiscally responsible to a point where we can have a business that, during the wintertime we take a loss, and then we try to make up for it in the summer because our interest rates are so shitty.
Yeah.
I mean, everything is based on prime. I mean, our prime interest. I mean, our interest rate on our loan right now is 14%.
Oh,
Yeah.
yikes.
So I mean, that's the thing I'm talking about. And
see.
like we were duped so hard, and we got the Fed telling us that we have to do this to get out of this. But it's like, how long do we have to do this to get out of this recession or whatever? That's or like, what are we doing, man? Because this is. I mean, I've paid for the last year and a half. I've paid double the interest than I did to my principal, and it's like I've barely paid it down, and I've given the government. I mean, I can't imagine how much money.
Yeah.
And I'm paying sales taxes on top of it.
Yeah.
And I'm paying the city to operate just because I decided to open a business and bring commerce to your city, so I'm going to pay you as well.
Wow. When you put it like that, it makes me not want to start a business.
I wouldn't.
Man.
No, not right now.
So then at the same time, you have all this stuff going on like, oh, if you don't wear a mask, you're trying to kill me, or you're racist, or
Sure.
if you're white, you're automatically racist, or, oh, we should not fund the police anymore because of whatever stupid reason.
Mm-hmm.
What was your experience like during that time, defund the police?
We weren't hit very hard with that.
Yeah.
We were pretty good. We have a great community here.
Good bubble.
We do.
Yeah.
We do. We have we got two sides, obviously.
Of course.
But the both, we have the far right, we have the far left, but it's regulated to a certain point. And we had the BLM up here. We had the marches downtown around the square. As part of that.
How many people showed up to those?
About a couple thousand, few thousand. I mean, there was a lot that showed up. We had one particular incident that I had to deal with was a ex-cop who was pushing a kid that was wearing a "fuck the police" shirt. And I had to fucking put the ex-cop in handcuffs and then interview the "fuck the police" guy for a victim statement.
Oh, jeez.
It was a weird thing.
That's like destiny right there.
Jeez,
those two.
It was, man. And it unfolded right in front of me. And
That's
I'm like,
hilarious.
you gotta be kidding me. And I'm taking this kid's statement, and
Pathetic.
and even at the end of that, he's like, thank you, and it's just like, it was amicable, and it's just like, well, then why are you wearing that fucking shirt?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not a bad guy.
It's because you don't know.
You don't know.
You don't know.
Yeah.
So ultimately, I think that regardless of what policy is put out, I mean, this gets into the whole like justice thing, because laws are made, and the point of a law is to uphold justice, right? And we see very clearly, especially through COVID, that just because a law or a policy is put in place doesn't mean that it's just.
No.
And that, I think we have a duty to break those laws or show people how those laws can be bent. And that's my maybe wild perspective, but I think that if it's about justice and you're trying to use that arm of enforcement to enforce something unjust, then it needs to be fought. What is that saying? When law becomes tyranny, rebellion is duty.
Yeah, man, and it's an interesting thought, and thinking about the way you said it, I can put it in a different way. I think there's a duty to society to point out that this law was just put into place to oppress.
Yeah.
And that's where case law comes in. And that's where good litigation comes in.
Oh,
And good, that's where calm perspectives, level heads come in, because people never make good case law, including cops, when you're just amped up, man, because
stressed out.
you're going to look like an asshole.
Yeah.
And the jury's not going to agree with you. And when it goes up through the ranks and you go through, your superior court up to your appellate court, and then you're going to go through the Ninth Circuit appellate court, then you're going to go up to the superior court, or the United States Superior Court. Like, if you look like an asshole, you're not going to win.
Yeah.
But if you look level-headed and you can talk, that's where that knowledge comes with knowing your search warrant exceptions, knowing your, what you can do really is going to make that difference. Because yeah, it is our duty in a way. Like you said it right, but not in a way where it's like rebellious, because rebellion's only going to push it the opposite direction, I believe.
Yeah.
Especially where we're at right now.
Right. Yeah. It's very delicate.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think it's important. I think it's important that people question, because if you don't question authority, then we don't progress as a society. And I think that's always been the case.
Yeah.
And police are the authority, and people need to question us.
Yeah.
You have to.
Often you need resistance in order to find growth.
Yeah, and I'm fine with being questioned.
Yeah.
I've never been. I mean, like in the beginning, I just because I said so. But now I'm not. I mean, at this point in time, I'm fine with being questioned. It's like I will explain it to you exactly how I know it, because I've read it and I understand it. Or I'm going to tell you I don't know, and I'm going to get back to you.
Yeah.
Because I'm not so high up on my horse that I need to be right.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that I don't sound dumb.
Right.
Which might be narcissistic. I don't know.
Well, it's a great motivator.
Yeah.
It's a great motivator. No, nobody wants to sound dumb. I don't think that's narcissistic. I guess if you have a scenario like a COVID situation where there's something big that happens and the government says, hey, this is how it's going to be, and then most of us disagree, and you're a police officer, obviously each officer is going to choose their own way during that time based on their circumstances.
Uh-huh.
Now that can become dangerous really fast. So I guess in preparation for the next version of COVID, what do you recommend people do, or what do you recommend that other officers do to prepare for that type of a scenario?
Sure. And I can answer it both ways, because I'll tell you exactly how I do as a citizen, and I'll tell you how I do as a police officer. As a citizen, I wouldn't talk to anybody about anything I'm doing. Nothing. I wouldn't invite anyone into my friend group that I didn't know. I wouldn't tell them, hey, and yeah, obviously, as a Christian, you want to spread the word. Hey, come down and do this. If they find it themselves, that's fine. And if cops surreptitiously figure it out and then come in and break it up, and it just is what it is. I just wouldn't try to expand my friend group.
Yeah.
I would keep to who I know,
Who you can trust.
and the thing is sometimes, as we know, as Christians, church isn't the end all be all for us Christians. We can sit together and we can discuss the Bible. We can discuss God and Jesus. And church can be where we want it.
Yeah, it's not the building.
It's not the building,
Yeah,
right?
it's
So I would take away the infrastructure.
right on.
That would be exactly what I would do. And that's the first thing that I would do if COVID were to happen again. And especially in our group. And then I would also, if it ever came down to a part where it was like even worse than it was last time, create a group of commerce, trade. Like I have this to give you. I can trade this commodity for your commodity.
Yep.
You work on vehicles. I don't know what I do, whatever I figure out I can do, and then
Yeah.
I can trade you. I have a restaurant. You know, help me with my vehicle. I'll give you food for the couple weeks or whatever it may be.
Right.
As a police officer, my biggest ask, I can't make anyone do, because everyone's a type A personality in police office work, and it's kind of annoying. Everyone's better than everybody, and nobody can sit down and objectively have a conversation. Like everyone's better. And
No.
yeah, I've been victim of that, man. Like I've done it. I've just learned to grow out of it. But my thing would be to push back.
Yeah.
No, man. Like we took the oath of office, and we were asked that question in the academy. All of us should have been. I know I was. If your boss were to tell you something that was illegal, would you do it? No.
Yeah, everybody answers it. I bet if you answered yes, you wouldn't get hired.
No, you wouldn't. But the
That's
thing is like we said what we needed to do, but did you feel it?
yeah,
I don't know if I felt it at the time. I know now I do.
right on.
I know now I do. Like I would just literally just be like, fuck off, man.
Yeah,
I'm just not going to do it.
yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's American spirit right there.
Yeah.
When a lot of people, at least in like you mentioned Alex Jones earlier. Alex Jones was
I actually love that guy.
oh dude, he's been great. He's where I got my start when I was a teenager, like 16, 17, 18.
The Bohemian Grove story is
Oh
the craziest
dude, it's
thing.
amazing. You watched the documentary about that?
Yeah.
Holy shit. That gets into some other weird areas of the
just-
satanic ritual abuse.
The way he can tell a story makes it even better because he gets so amped up.
Yeah.
But the Bohemian Grove, I love it.
It's such a good one.
Yeah.
It's so creepy. They're making sacrifices to Molech, man.
Well, what about Obama?
That's
being
in
a
the
part of
Bible. Oh yeah, Obama's apparently a part of the Luciferian Brotherhood system. He took
that? I did not know
the
this.
position of the Phoenix is what they call his position. That
Wow.
was a position that he took over. There's a woman I talked to named Jessie Zaboter on the podcast about that. She was in that system as a child, and so she knows all about this stuff. And dude, it gets nuts.
Wow, I got it. I didn't know it was Moloch was in the Bible, which is.
Oh yeah, Moloch is what.
I'm still reading through it for the first time. So
Yeah, well, I guess I haven't read all the way straight through it,
Yeah.
but Moloch is a demon that children are sacrificed to.
sure, I know that.
And so one thing that people say is that abortion is for that.
Oh, and that's. I mean, there was a huge part of the black community. That was mentioned for with Margaret Sanger and then like the
Margaret Sanger. Ooh,
Yeah.
creepy shit.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Where's I going with that? Oh,
Sorry. Yeah.
Alex
I got you off
Jones.
track.
No,
Alex
you're
Jones,
good. Alex Jones. So he's where I got my start. But a lot of the people in that type of community, the preppers and the things like that. So many people seem to think, especially people I know, seem to think like, oh, when shit hits the fan or when shit pops off, it's going to be like gunfights. And I think that that's going to be a very, very small percentage of what's currently slowly happening. The biggest percentages of it are going to be your right to travel and where you can source your food and water.
Sure.
And that's the stuff we got to focus on.
Ultimately, at the end of the day, man, is if you're a believer, we know that end times are coming. Whenever that is, no one's going to know, right? We've been told that several times. We're not going to be able to buy anything, me or you. Because I'm not, I'm not getting the mark. I know I'm not.
That's right.
And I will do what I have to, and so that portion of society is gonna have to fend for themselves, and that's gonna be commodity, and what do you bring to do you grow food? Do you hunt? Do you work on cars? You wanted to talk about traffic stops. You had told me about like what's the right of the driver, the passengers and stuff. Do you want to dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't quite remember. I didn't get a chance to type out all my notes, but dive into it. I'll have questions.
Sure. When we had first talked, we had talked extensively about, when I pull somebody over, what's the right of the people inside the vehicle and like what people in Arizona believe that their rights are and what there's a common misconception.
Yeah, exactly.
And, it's not for the driver. It's more for us. And like I had said previously in our conversation, it's a probable cause state. My stop is already deemed good. I found a legitimate, and I don't have to tell you why I stopped you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I ask you for your ID, you cannot refuse that when you're the driver.
Mm-hmm.
There are certain applications that you can refuse that as a passenger, but not always. And the driver specifically cannot give that right up. You have to give it to me, and if you don't, you're gonna find yourself in hot water. Which now you've turned whatever civil into a crime.
Yeah.
And so people really need to know when they can say I'm not going to give that up, and when they can't. And there's also certain case laws that allow me to ask passengers, and I could remove passengers, and I can control their movements and then request their ID as well. You know, you got Maryland v. Wilson, you got an Arizona case v. Jones, I believe. It's a DPS case, and that one involved like the officer. It was a Terry for a stop, is what they call it. They're stopping this vehicle pretextually. They're searching for guns, and this person was making some movements, and the officer felt like there was a gun in the car because of the movements. She pulled him out, patted him down, and found a gun on him. You know, and they were able to remove the passengers and do that. And so there's a common misconception that as a passenger in the car, you can just get out and walk away. You're detained. You're not allowed to move. You're not allowed to go. Now, this is not a criminal investigation now, but you don't know where this is going to head.
Right.
You know, and the Supreme Court is already deemed that my stop is constitutionally okay. And everybody in the car right now, you're detained, but you're not always subject to identification and or being pulled out of the car. Now, if this is normal, you were 5 miles an hour over, as a police officer, I can't say, hey, backseat passenger, give me your ID.
Oh, interesting.
I can't just say, get out of the car. I can't do that. Because if I don't have, it's a 5-year-old kid. Is he reaching around for guns? Let's say it's a 16-year-old kid.
Yeah.
And he's just sitting there reading a book. I have no reason to believe he's a danger to me. I have to be able to articulate he's a danger.
Do you have officers that make it a general practice to get everybody's ID no matter what car they stop?
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
Oh, you did that?
Yeah, 100%. I tried. You know, but I, you know, there was lines drawn by people and said I wouldn't, and there was sometimes I'd push, and other times I'd be like, yeah, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
Constitutionally,
Okay.
because I could make bad case law, based on what houses they were coming out of, who the driver was.
Yeah.
You know, like 100%. I mean, and then you know, sometimes the driver was giving me less vibes than the backseat passenger was. You know, and then I want to know like what's going on.
Yeah,
here,
yeah.
You know, and it's but that's just my curiosity. Because I just want to know, you know, and it, you know, I was, like I said, I was very successful because I did that, but I also knew the parameters I was able to, you know, operate in, you know, but when people start saying, you'll hear people say, this is not a stop and ID state. It's like, yeah, it's not, but it's a probable cause state. And right now you're being pulled over and I'm asking for ID and you're going to be under arrest per probable cause if you don't give it to me.
Yeah.
You know, and so people just have to realize, like, you have to give it to them. Like, unfortunately, you're the driver. You have to prove that you're able to drive here on the roads, and that the Constitution or the Supreme Court has said it's constitutionally okay.
Yeah.
I mean, they have there's cases out there. I think it was Illinois versus Caballo that basically said even if an officer pulls you over, and the officer pulls you over a false pretense, not because he willfully did that and pretended that he was doing something in the right, but he just ignorantly pulled you over thinking that this was the case, that this was the law, that it's still constitutionally okay to pull you over. And whatever criminal aspect he found during that is still okay. And so people have to realize, like, you're in a car, your rights are a lot less than you think they are.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Right on. Going into more of like the detective stuff, what exactly... I mean, are you working a set schedule?
Yeah, we do work a set schedule. I'm at the moment Monday through Thursday, but we're also on call every 4 weeks for a whole week.
Okay, 24 hours.
24 hours a day
for the whole week.
7 days a week. Yeah.
Okay, and on that on call, what is that? That's not for patrol stuff, I'm sure. That's for
major crimes.
Major crimes.
Or,
okay.
yeah, things that they can't figure out.
Okay, so there's always somebody available middle of the night to come investigate some major crime.
Yes, correct.
Got it.
Yeah.
And as a detective, obviously I can think of like Hollywood stuff I've seen that's like, all right, well, you're sitting in an office, you're going through this type of paperwork, you're following leads, you're calling places, you're visiting people. Now, if you have to like surveil somebody, do you do that, or do you assign somebody to do that? If so, do you pick a night to do it? I mean, obviously it's situational, but I guess if you can talk about it, if you're willing to talk about it, how would you go about doing that?
I mean, it depends. It really is situational, like you said. Like, I might use another government agency that has like real undercover people, like HSI or
What is HSI?
Homeland Security.
Oh,
Yeah.
You can ask them to do stuff like that.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I have contacts everywhere. It's and we've made contacts with all sorts of government agencies, and ATF, HSI, FBI, you name it. Outside of the CIA, I don't talk, and we don't have nothing to do with the CIA. But
I got words for these FBI guys.
yeah,
No, I'm just kidding.
no, I mean some of them, dude. There's some really good ones, man. But how disappointed was I during a lot of the stuff that's gone on, and me and you share that, and the people that I know that I work with, 100% share that. Obviously, I'm not going to give names, but
For sure, yeah.
and the people that work in that, and the people that were the ones that were disappointing were the ones that were politically motivated and still are politically motivated. Like I would venture to say that 80% of the people that work in the field are like-minded to like, what the fuck, man? Like they have some political stuff that's going on where they might like not like Trump or whatever, but I just don't believe it. I mean, and I'm taking my own biases from the people I know. I just don't believe that a majority of them believe what was going on. But gosh dang, dude, it made it hard for me, very, very hard to this day, to be like, what the heck was going on here, man? Like, huge overstep. The
Yeah.
FBI was the catalyst for the breakdown in the Republican of law enforcement. The FBI started that.
How?
COVID.
Oh, well.
I mean, the targeting of parents, the profiling of Trump's camp, the not prosecuting Chelsea or Hillary Clinton, the I mean, the director of the FBI just being. I mean, I think the FBI was the catalyst. I think it was the start.
So when you say 80% of people in that field,
No, the field agents,
80% of the field agents,
the ones that are doing the actual law enforcement
yeah,
work.
yeah, they disagree with what happened.
I think that they side more with me and you.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, I would, and I'm like I said, I'm putting a number I don't know, but
That's just a guess.
it's a guess of the people because of the people I know, like
that are not politically motivated.
100% of them
Right.
also believe what I'm saying, so I have to put like a 20% variant on that.
Right. And if you think about it, people that go to do these jobs, the majority of the time, they're what I would call the good guys. You know, they go and do this job because it's an honorable thing, because there's a potential for being a hero, and because you want to help people and you want to do good and you want to enforce justice, and you want to catch the bad guys.
Sure.
Right. That's my general overview of any of those types of jobs.
Sure.
And then, a little bit of money goes a long way.
It does.
I mean,
And political power, a little bit of moving up.
and probably an egoic sense of,
Sure.
oh, well, if I do this thing, then it's going to have a big impact on the country. And
Sure.
then you justify why that impact on the country might be beneficial for its citizens, since you're in the FBI and
Sure.
I don't know, just spitballing, but
Yeah, I mean, the thing is I won't know, and I just know that talking with them, like, it wasn't that same sentiment.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. All right, what else we got here? There's we're kind of bouncing around, but going back to being pulled over, there's like a 15-minute rule.
Yeah, I mean, the courts have kind of come up with like what's a standard for how long you can be pulled over, and the courts kind of, there's nothing definitive, there's not like it's better be 15 minutes or not, I mean, they kind of look at that as kind of like a roundabout, like it's just whatever it takes to get that job done, like whatever that job may be, like I pull you over and I need to write a speeding ticket, like how long should that take? I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm a slow rider, so you got like a 2 or 3 minute gap or whatever on either side. 8 or 9 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 12 minutes. But during that time, if I develop other reasonable suspicion that something else is going on, I can prolong that stop. And so like, but if I just pulled you over, like I said, civil ticket, and it's legitimately like, I was 5 miles an hour over in a school zone, and I'm super sorry, I admit it, and he goes back and it takes 30 minutes to write a ticket, you might have a good civil case on your hand, because that's an unlawful detainment. Like that, you're just keeping me longer than you need to write me this ticket.
Yeah.
Outside of you developing something else, like, you saw a meth pipe in my console, or, it's talking to me and you asked where I came from, and I said my brother's house, and I asked who my brother was, and I was like, I'm sorry, I don't have a brother. I just said that. You know, like that's a little bit weird. I'm gonna probably ask you to step out of the car and explain yourself. Like,
Yeah.
why are you so nervous? Like things like that. You know, you can extend the traffic stop to you know investigate what you believe is a reasonable suspicion of a crime.
Yeah.
You know, and so it really depends. As long as the officer's articulate enough, I mean, they can articulate a lot of things to be suspicious. Most people are nervous when they get pulled over by the cops. I'm nervous when I'm a freaking police officer. I get nervous. I got pulled over freaking 2 years ago. And I was nervous,
Yeah.
you know, and the guy recognized me, and I was just like, well, you know, just give me a ticket if you need to, man. And you know, and I can't remember, I got a warning, and you know, let me go. But I was nervous the whole freaking time.
Were you
I was
speeding?
doing 7 over.
Yeah. That's
I was doing 7 over.
yeah. It's
But I was kind of pissed.
yeah.
You know, because I was just like,
Pulled
I
over
wouldn't
for a
pull
dumb
anyone over
reason.
for 7 over. But I also knew they were doing a traffic detail that day.
Oh, okay.
You know, and I knew why they were doing it, and you know, it just is what it is. I got pulled over as an inconvenience for like 6 minutes. But you know, I mean, it's you just gotta know.
That was in your fuck everybody stage.
Yeah, kind of. You know, I mean, I speed though. I think all cops speed.
Yeah.
We get so used to driving fast because our job is driving.
Oh, hey, guess what, cops? If you're listening and you're a police officer, I'll tell you other things that you do.
We do everything.
You get on your little computer while you're driving and you swerve.
Yeah, we do that.
And you cross over into other lanes without your turn signal. You switch lanes without a signal.
100%.
All kinds of stuff, man.
We do all that, you know, and we got exempt from that new county whatever you call it for being on your cell phones because of that. But you know, and it is true. Man, we're all
What
over.
do you mean you got exempt from what?
So what's that? The county
Hands free or something?
no, the hands free thing. What's that? It's not a law. It's a I can't think of the word.
It's a prop. It's not a prop.
That's not a prop. It's a
Policy.
we're using. I have it on the tip of my tongue. It's weird. I can't think. It's like such a simple word. Regardless, it says we can't be on our cell phones while we're driving, and
And you're exempt from that because oftentimes you have to talk to the
We have
person
to.
reporting.
we have to. Well, we have to be on our computers. Our computers are part of our job. We
Yeah.
have to answer cell phones. We have to be on the radio.
Yep.
So I mean, there's specific provisions inside this county ordinance.
Ordinance, that's the word.
Oh man, I feel good about myself. I was gonna. So ordinance that we're allowed to do, and dude, I was sitting at a light one time, and like I said, I'm pretty candid and open, and you know, I told him myself actually on this one, but this guy is like, "Hey, roll down your window," and I'm sitting there at this light, and it's in Prescott Valley, and I'm like, "All right, man, I'll roll down my window," and I'm thinking, what is he gonna ask? Like, he's like, you get a lot of these stupid things, like I didn't do it, or behind me there's a guy that passed on a double yellow, and it's just like, okay, dude,
I didn't see
I didn't see it.
later.
Cool, yeah, whatever. And so I'm like, what is this guy gonna say? And he's like, hey, motherfucker, you know you're not supposed to be on your computer, you know, because per this county ordinance. And I said, fuck off, and I rolled my window up. And
Yeah.
I was just like,
Shouldn't have said it that way.
that was just. I mean, it was just one of those things that just came out of my mouth.
Yeah.
Because I was just already kind of like, what do you need? And then like this guy, and so I called my sergeant. I was like, hey man, I'm so sorry. You're probably gonna get a complaint. And I'm not even 20 seconds later, it pops up. Deputy
shit.
told me to go fuck myself, and he misquoted me.
Yeah.
I said fuck off. And so anyways, I got brought in the office and talked to, like, hey, you know, you need to have a little bit. And I was like, yeah, you're right. But we all have these moments. We're human,
Yeah.
you know. And it's just like, you know, I'm sitting at a red light, right?
Yeah. Trying to explain
Reading.
some ordinance that you're exempt from
Well,
as
and
an
it's just,
officer.
I'm not even driving. You know, I'm sitting at a red light reading the freaking what we call the CAD. You know, the information that's on the, and I'm reading it, and I'm not even driving. And I'm like, well, the provision actually, or the ordinance actually says you guys can look at your phone at red lights as long as you're stopped and not driving. It's fine.
Yeah.
You know, and I got this guy, you know, wanting to, but he's just wanting to give me shit.
Yeah.
You know, and you get that after 12 years, 11 years, and you're just like, whatever, man. Like, but you know, I like I said it. I rolled up my window, and I was like, and I just immediately called my sergeant, and I was just like, hey, man, this is what happened. I did this. You're gonna get a call, and sure as shit, 20 seconds later, here it comes in, like, you guys saying this And it was true. I
So,
did.
so when that guy called, I mean, that seems really fast. Did he call 911 and say, "Hey, this just
I
happened"?
have no idea.
That sounds really
Yeah,
fast.
I'd have no idea if he called 911. We have the a non-emergency line. He called us apparently. I mean, he knew it. And had my vehicle number and
Oh, I'm
everything.
sure.
Yeah, so he was prepared.
He's that type of guy.
Yeah, he was prepared.
Right on.
So good for him. Yeah, he got what he wanted.
You guys ever work with private security in any capacity?
Yeah.
Not like mall cop style, but like, I mean, something in between mall cops and Blackwater.
We have. We have.
What kind of agencies or what kind of companies are there that do that?
We do. There have been some protection agencies from like local governments that we've done, like people that like hire outside of like the Secret Service, that might add whatever to their security details.
So are those government people or are they former government operatives that are hired freelance?
It just depends.
Okay.
It depends.
It
And it
could
could
be
be
any of it.
It could, man, and it doesn't. It depends. It's a dignitary. It could be a celebrity. It could be whatever. I mean, and they'll hire us because we're just extra security.
Yeah.
We're not part of their detail whatsoever. But it's like,
But your agency never goes after and gets some of those people for extra help for anything.
no,
Okay.
no,
Right on.
yeah.
Cool, man. Well, I guess we'll probably wrap this up
Yeah.
but before we do, if you had any words of wisdom for new officers or deputies, what would you tell them?
Dude, my biggest thing is stop fucking with people.
Yeah.
Like honestly, our job is not to mess with people. Our job is to uphold the Constitution. Our job is to enrich people's lives.
Yeah.
There's a reason and time that we do fuck with people, and you'll know that as soon as you recognize that our job is not to do that. And I know that seems counterintuitive to our job because you watch the shows and it's all about pulling people over, interrogations. It's not about that. It's about being a real person. It's about enriching your community and listening to the people that you're serving. And it's not about you being bigger than them or better than them because we didn't take this job to get a title advancement. We took this job to protect our community, not because we can tell people I told you so.
Yeah.
We're not parents to people that are our own age and older than us. We are protectors of our community, and we're people that want to enrich it. And so we need more of that.
Yeah.
So that would be my advice.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, man. I appreciate this a lot.
Yeah, man. Thank you.